From the heart of Maine, this is the DuView podcast.
All right, and welcome to this week's episode of the DuView podcast. I am your host, Du, a.k.a. Ryan Dumont, and we're back. First episode of 2023, guys.
We are so back.
We are so back, and that is the voice of my guest this week for episode 39, my first friend of college, Mr. Jacob Bass. Jake, welcome on, buddy.
Thanks, man. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you on. As I said, Jake and I met in college. He, aside from just being my friend, he has more credentials than that, obviously. He is also an educator in the great state of New Hampshire, which is, as folks know from listening to the podcast, my second home. We spent a lot of time in at least 4 years, plus for you now, and some of you other guys that ended up staying in New Hampshire after graduation. But, New Hampshire was our second home, good old Saint Anselm College.
Gotta love it.
Yep. And so, Jake, when you were, looking out to the college experience as a senior or even a junior, really, in high school, what really attracted you to, go to St. A's? I know I ask all of my, St. A's alumni friends, because for everybody it's a little different.
The tales from SAC.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know. When I was... What I really wanted to do, I really wanted to go to Georgia because that was where most of my family had gone, and I went down there, toured the place. Loved it. It's hard to beat Athens in SEC football, too.
Right, especially if you're big into college football, which you are. So,
but once I applied, I got the estimated tuition bill back, and my mother was not having that.
Yep.
So she told me to look elsewhere, so I started looking at URI, which is basically 13th grade if you're from the great state of Rhode Island.
Yeah, that's like UMaine Orono for us here. It's like, that'll be the next year of high school, college.
Oh, yeah. And small state schools like that, you're going to run into people. I know people tell you all the time, it doesn't matter, where you go, you can make new friends and things like that. That's bull crap. You're going to run into people there. Small states, small schools.
Yeah.
But so I actually had a family friend graduate from St. A's, I think would have been spring of 2016. So it was our first year there.
Yep.
He had graduated from there, and I had heard good things about it from there. I went and toured the campus, and I think it was over our February break. So it was a day or two after a major snowstorm had hit too. So the whole place was just covered in snow.
Which is arguably one of the most beautiful times of that campus.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is. And my logic was, well, if I'm going to go to college in New England, I want to see a New England college either when it's snowing or just after it's snowing, just so I can get a feel for it. And it was freezing cold and probably a good 7 or 8 inches of snow on the ground. I loved it up there.
Yep.
Just the vibes of the campus and how it's just a really nice and serene place. And I learned that over the 4 years I was there too. Just how serene it can be.
Oh, it's an incredibly peaceful place, smack dab, and really a pretty good-sized metropolitan area when you think about everything that goes on in southern New Hampshire. For those of you that don't know, Manchester, New Hampshire, where we went to college, was a big industrial city at one time. Similar to how, I was actually just talking to somebody the other day, and I was like, I've lived in river cities and towns my entire life, whether it be Manchester, Augusta, Newmarket, down in Farmingdale in Maine, or up in Skowhegan where I was born. It's all been river cities that all had to do with mills. And I understand that, Jake teaches history, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but it's the importance of water sources to, creating civilization or creating towns. And I mean, it only makes sense that, why directly but indirectly I would gravitate rather towards places like that. But it's kind of an interesting, observation and how these cities are now on really their second or third big economic spin. The mills are gone, long gone. They're not making textiles in Manchester, New Hampshire anymore, so they have to do something else. And I guess a big part of New Hampshire is education now.
Yeah.
Being post post high school education. I mean, you got a bunch of institutions in a pretty small state if you think about it.
Yeah, I think higher ed's got to be up there with. I'm just bullshitting.
Right? Yeah, no, of course.
All I know is I know nothing, but higher ed's probably got to be up there with tourism as one of New Hampshire's biggest.
And I know New Hampshire's big on some of the data industry stuff now. Like I know that they're getting bigger into like I don't know fiber optics and stuff like that. Like I know that there's some places like that, but it's just been interesting to see how these like these areas like. Technically, like Saint Anselm College really isn't even in Manchester, New Hampshire. That's just the most recognizable city next to it. I mean, nobody knows where Goffstown, but arguably Goffstown is the cooler place in my opinion. It's like really unique,
Goffstown
very
is
quiet.
so cool.
Yeah. Oh, it's very well, not quiet in a bad sense, but it's like quaint in certain aspects.
It is. Downtown Goffstown's awesome. There's like the depot where the tracks used to run through. That's like all done up, and there's like a couple of cool like small businesses down there. Mm-hmm. And just like the riverfront downtown is it's a really cool place to walk. I like that a lot.
Yeah. No, that's the same thing like with a lot of the areas around here. I mean, like you have like old train stations that have been repurposed for other things. I guess a monument to times of the past, of times that used to be. And at the same time, I mean, you have like new takes, like using old mill buildings to create lofts, using old mill buildings to create new businesses.
Oh, yeah.
Like revitalizing areas, which I think is really cool in a lot of ways, which I think made our time in Manchester kind of special too, because I mean, they're really still in the midst of that. Like Manchester is on its, it's always been an ebb and flow of change as a lot of places have been. But, like I said, I mean, you're in what, Derry now?
Yeah.
You decided to stay, after graduation in Derry now. And I guess how does living in Derry compared to like when you're living on the other side of the river, I guess?
Derry's a unique place. I think Derry is actually a microcosm of New Hampshire because you've got you have like the downtown Derry has been rebuilt. I think within the last like 10 to 15 years.
Yep.
It's been like revitalized, and there are a ton of like really awesome small businesses down there doing like, of course you like your restaurants and your stuff like that, but there's like other like little like manufacturers and stuff like that doing like all kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah.
And then you got like Pinkerton Academy is probably one of the at least more like well known public semi-private high schools in the state.
Yep.
So you got that. The schools in Derry are pretty good, but then you've got once you get off like some of the main roads in Derry, you hit like New Hampshire, and that comes with its host of problems too.
Yeah,
and also like good things too. Like there's a ton of good people living in Derry, and everybody there that I've interacted with so far has just been like super friendly, super welcoming.
Yep,
and I love the place.
Yeah, it's a good spot. The only thing I can remember about Derry is from my time on the campaign trail, obviously, and Derry is very much a Republican town.
Yes,
very much a red town, which nothing wrong with that. Just where the people in the area, flock to. But the only thing that made us nervous, when we were coming into town is how we would be received, being like the rebel renegades. But we were received, again, as you said, very polite, very kind, very respectful.
Awesome.
Didn't like what we were doing, but they were polite about it, which can't be said for every other town in New Hampshire. So.
No, certainly not.
It's a great area. I mean, Mary Ann's is a legendary breakfast spot down there.
Sure
and,
is.
Like I said, I really do love New Hampshire, and if I didn't live in Maine, I'd honestly say, I mean, it'd either be New Hampshire or Massachusetts for me. I mean, like, I don't know, I don't really see myself anywhere else in New England for any reason. I mean, like I said, Vermont just needs to have a couple more things going on. It's like I already live in a rural, New England state. I don't really, need to do that.
I love Vermont.
I do, but like
Vermont's
I said, no hatred on Vermont. No, by no means. I mean, like I said, Ben and Jerry's ice cream and Burn Dog Sanders. I mean, like, hey,
Vermont's a cool place. There's a lot of cool people up there too.
Oh, there really are. I mean, we know some of them. Hey, there are some great folks up in Vermont. And like I said, but with I guess getting back to it though, without Saint Anselm College, Jake, we obviously never would have met as the same for all of it. And regardless of where I'm at today and where you're at today, like I said, I'm happy that I went to Saint Anselm College, regardless if I'm in full use of my degree or not. I'm a bit salty. I was a bit salty at times. It's like fuck it, what blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, no, I am very happy about the people that I met, and I've had an opportunity to cool off a little bit and to think about things, and it's like I'm very grateful. And thankful, grateful, and all the fulls that you can use. I'm very happy that I met all of you guys. I mean, Pete, Lucas, Tyler, you, Chap, Bobby, Timmy, James, Talalis,
the Rolls wagons,
the Rollaries. Yeah, I mean, Johnny Pony. I mean, all those guys. Just tremendous. Tremendous people. And plus, there's many more that I didn't even name.
Everybody in between.
And everybody in between, those who have remained nameless. Like I said, it's interesting, though, because, like I said, it's a small school. But, like I said, if you go and make the most of it, you make some really good friendships and stuff. And like I said, as I was talking with my dad before you came up, and I was like, yeah, you know what? Thinking about it, I've known Jake the longest out of all those guys from college. And in part because we were in the same orientation group day one, literally day one friends. And I mean, like, how often do you end up staying friends with someone who you met like because you were forced to be in the same group as them?
Government mandated friendship.
That and my government cheese, dude. That's all I need, right? Yeah. No, but seriously, it's been great. Like I said, we were on the same floor too.
Yeah.
In Dom in our freshman dorm, which was huge. We were actually just on complete opposite ends of the horseshoe from each other.
Yep.
The building made kind of like a U shape, and so like you'd come up the staircase, which would be in the middle, and Jake was off to the left and around the corner, and I was off to the right and around the corner. And let me tell you, the fourth floor was one of the cleaner floors, but it was also like it could get rowdy up there.
Oh yeah.
Because they had literally the room 420 in the corner. Those football guys.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And it was ironic because, like, they were definitely burning some of the devil's lettuce in the room 420. And so you'd walk down the hall and be like, woo, what's going on down there, boys? It's like you're living up to your name of the room, the door name. Oh,
couldn't be any more cliche than that.
You really couldn't. And I mean, like, that was not the not like the only thing that went on up there, obviously, by any means. But, we had a great RA. Good old shout out to Danny Ryan.
Yep.
I love that guy.
Homeboy.
I think he was out of like Swampskip, Mass, or something like that.
Something
Like that. Great guy, honestly. To have like like when you get into college and it's like your RA can either be really chill and cool or he can be a dick. And we had one who was really chill and cool. And I'll tell this story because this is a good one. Okay. And I know it came off the remnants of Mojito Weekend, which I'm sure you remember or don't remember. But like, let's just say, I was not your stereotypical like freshman. It's not just like let's drink all this like cheap watered down beer. I'm like, no, I'm over here trying to like open up like a speakeasy in my room or something like low key, And so I was like whipping up mojitos one weekend because we had mint and whatever, and ended up having a conversation out in the hallway with my RA, and he was like, yeah, like I can like beep right into somebody's room, or like however the conversation like led, and me being a freshman forgetting that I had 2 handles of Bacardi Superior White Rum on my desk, forgot that fact, and I positioned myself to kind of stand in front of it as he was like just having a conversation, because we were just having a conversation completely unrelated to booze or anything like that, and conversation wraps up. He's getting ready to go to his room for the evening. He goes, hey, next time just don't leave those out on your desk. I'm like, god damn it, he saw it. But like I said, he was understanding, he was chill, he was a good guy, and I like I said, I appreciate that. It's like I think that you can take a lot from that, and like for people who have authority over other people, and it's like, hey, you don't just have to fuck people every time.
Absolutely.
Like some of the biggest punishments can not be through coercion or force of like
it's shame.
Yeah, dude,
Shame's
seriously,
one of the biggest factors.
Oh,
man.
I know it. It's like, and that's how I think like you're not policing, but like at schools, like as long as no one's getting hurt, like I wasn't hurting nobody, maybe myself, but that's here nor there, Right. It's like, but that's like there were a lot of good people like that. They were like, they'd look out, they'd have your back, they would say, hey, don't be stupid. As long as you're not stupid, you're fine. But the second you act stupid, all bets are off.
Exactly.
It's like, and that's how it was for a lot of folks there. If you did stupid shit at St. A's, you didn't make it. In part, but if you were smart about it, you were fine,
Exactly.
And so, I mean, it's just interesting, like we look back and it's we're going to be closer to our, 10-year anniversary than we are to our day of graduation, which is crazy. Lord. Like I said, we got those, high school 10-year anniversaries will be coming up pretty soon here. Which is, again, crazy. Like I said, the time thing, dude.
That just hit me like a train right now.
Yep, sorry, buddy. Not to make you drive 2.5 hours, then hit you with some life-altering wisdom. My bad. I don't mean to do that to you, but hey, sometimes you got to do it to them, But no, we graduated from St. A's in 2019, rather, not 20. We started in 2015.
Yep.
Graduated in 2019, and so you and Pony stayed down in New Hampshire.
We did.
And Jimbo and I also stayed in New Hampshire, just up on the seacoast, and went to your place for like the Super Bowl and stuff, and hung out a few times. The few free moments I did have.
Yeah.
And so like I guess this kind of gets into the next part I want to talk about is that now that we're out of school. You went in and like I said, Jake graduated with a degree in education and history. Were you a double major? Yep. And so that's another big interest that Jake and I both had as we were meeting each other is like, oh, like we're both very much students of history. And actually, to take a quick history sidebar, history was a big thing that brought our entire friend group together in the first place,
absolutely.
really. And I wasn't even on that trip. I just was kind of an addendum after the fact, but happened to have already befriended 3 different people that were already in that group, which was how it just happened to work out. So it was actually, if you want to tell the story, you could do it more justice. Who was on the Passages trip? If you could just kind of tell that, a little bit of that story, if you could.
Out of our friend group? Or
Yeah,
just
out
in
of our
general?
friend group. Yeah, just like
well,
the people who matter, you know?
Right, of course. No shade at any of the other folks. That were
No,
on that
no,
trip.
just like, but like pertaining to our
good
friend
time
group.
and good folks.
Yeah.
But Chap, we had Tyler,
Yep. Chap, Tyler,
Tim,
Timmy.
Lucas.
Yep. And was Bobby there?
No,
Nope, no Bobby. Okay. So
Bobby,
that's
Bobby and Tim were the Belmont boys.
that's right. All right. I for some reason I thought Bobby went on that trip. No, okay. So it was like me and Bobby that weren't on the trip. Of all the, of those folks. All right. So yeah, Bobby and I, like Bobby went to, who eventually we'll hear from on here at some point. Got to have Bobby on the
that'd be
podcast.
awesome.
But Bobby, any of those guys really, frankly. But our, Tyler was in jazz band with me.
Yep.
Great guy. Love Tyler. Shout out to Tyler Glass. One of the best piano players I've ever had the privilege of playing with.
Incredibly talented.
And I'm going to drag him back out there, whether he does it kicking and screaming.
Pull him out of retirement.
Yeah, exactly. And then Timmy, great guy, another history aficionado.
Oh, big time. Very smart guy too.
Love Timmy. Lucas, who you've heard from numerous times, 3 times on the podcast.
Also a very smart guy.
Also a very smart dude. Like I said, congratulations on he's just actually working his first job
That's amazing.
in the psychology world. So
That's amazing.
he's doing counseling now full time, which is awesome.
That's awesome.
Shout out to Luke. And then let's
congrats,
see, and then
man.
Chap, obviously, Chap you've heard from on the podcast before too. Zach Chapman, fantastic friend, fantastic person.
He is.
And
He really is.
like I said, actually was at a concert with him this past summer. I was at Dead and Company with him and Luke, and almost you, but it was just busy and timeline. It was 4th of July weekend. It's tough.
Yep.
It just didn't line up. But anyway, regardless of that, like I said, we had a really good group of friends who ended up going on this Passages trip, which was Gettysburg.
Yes, Gettysburg. We did. I forget if it was like a full day or just like a half day detour over into like Harper's Ferry, which I think is now in West Virginia, but that's where like the like
John
Brown's raid was. And
who was a great dude in American history, not like in terms of like as being a good person, but in terms of like being a figure in American history. Like you don't get too
Very
many more like
polarizing.
you don't get too many like John. Well, I'm a born Northerner.
Oh, of course.
John Brown's a great dude as far as I'm concerned. Went into Kansas, killed a bunch of slave owning people.
Yeah.
Like hey, that's the way. But for maybe somebody who was born in Georgia, maybe he's more of a scourge. I don't know. Tried to get a bunch of slaves to revolt. I don't know. Like
I've got to say, one of the things I really appreciate about him, just from like a modern standpoint, is his actions have actually opened up a really good path to conversation with students, especially now with like all the the things going on in today's political climate.
Right, between either well, I mean if you want to look at it from the race perspective, between Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, that perspective, there's great insight into that. There's great insight into I guess government overreach or or what is the appropriate amount of government power.
Yeah, and one of my I taught AP US history last year, and
dude, that's the one class. Like if I ever get back into education, that push, dude. That's all I want to teach.
I love it. We spent I got railroaded and derailed for a full 80-minute class period because we were talking about whether or not John Brown was a hero or a domestic terrorist.
Yeah, that's
it was good stuff.
Ooh,
it
gets the kids thinking, doesn't it?
I had like 16, 17-year-olds coming at me with like perspectives I had never even thought about before.
See, that's awesome. That's why I love education, dude. That's tremendous.
Really good.
That's and that like you can do that with a lot of people throughout history too, and like
totally.
And that's why I wish like people did all their research on historical figures like. And we do it with the founding fathers. We do it with a lot of people who we put up really on a pedestal, and you got to be careful about that in history because nobody's perfect. We are all human after all at the end of the day, and it's like, like Benjamin Franklin was a great, smart dude, but sexually he was also a freak, and you just got to let in the words to quote the late David Crosby, let your freak flag fly. And like I said,
rest in peace.
R.I.P. I'll get into him in a little bit because, like I said, that was a huge blow this week. You were the first person I texted about that. I was like, "Hey, Crosby died." And you're like,
stinks.
"Oh shit!"
That
And
really
to quote you, he was still better than Neil Young.
Yep.
No, I mean no offense to Neil Young and the Crazy Horse stuff, but
I mean all the offense to Neil Young. Neil Young sucks.
All right, Jake means all the offense, but it's it's just interesting, like the history, like I said, the perspectives and everything like that, and I think that was one of the coolest parts. Actually, to get back to St. A's for a quick second, shout out to the Saint Anselm College History Department.
Yep, absolutely.
You are a great bunch of educators and a
They
great
really
bunch
are.
of people.
They
Holy
are.
shit! I have never seen. I mean, other than maybe the politics department, they're also pretty great. But again, I'm biased. Like I said, what a great group of people.
They really are, man.
From at the chair at the time, Beth Salerno,
Yep.
to DeBrule, to Padge, to Mazer, and everybody in between who I didn't have. I mean, tremendous group of people.
They are.
I mean, I went to a foreign country with two of them. I went to Cuba with Madge and with Padge and Mazer. So I mean, tremendous guys, love them all. And then I came back
awesome.
and had DeBrule for a Civil War class. Tremendous people, really tremendous people.
Yeah, very
and Andy
smart,
Moore
very
too.
well read.
I can't forget about Professor Moore too.
Yep.
He was my American Studies advisor.
Very
Great guy,
smart guy.
tremendous.
Very, very smart guy.
Yep.
I took a really good class with him about I took a couple of classes with him, but the one I'm thinking of was it was my like undergrad seminar that I did,
Mm-hmm.
and it was about how like basically like people's political alignments have changed in the country in general from roughly like the 1890s to today.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. We read a really wide variety of books, and it was mostly focused on the South because I think that's like his area
Yeah,
of expertise.
he's from Tennessee too,
Oh, yeah.
so he knows about the Southland quite well.
Oh yeah, we had there's like probably 7 or 8 of us, and I'd say out of those 7 or 8, 5 of us did the reading, myself included on most days. That was one of the few classes that I think I read most every book cover to cover for.
Unlike that day in what was it in Bob's class where no one
yeah.
did the reading, and he's like, just everybody go the hell home. I don't.
Man, that was one of the best worst moments of my college career. Chap and I show up for this. It was a great book seminar, and we were supposed to watch I think it was a Shakespeare. It was like a film adaptation of Shakespeare's The Tempest.
Yeah.
We were supposed to watch that on a Monday night. Show up Tuesday morning for a discussion on the book. Chap and I get there. We're like a few minutes late, like we always are. And there's like 2 people in the room. We're like, what the hell? Where is everybody? So we start like slowly sitting down, and Bob Anderson's looking at us like we had 3 heads. And before our asses even touched the seat, he looks at us. He goes, "You boys do the reading?" Chap, God love him, he starts like trying to talk his way out of it, and Bob just looks at me and goes, "Get the hell out of here." My ass still isn't even in the seat yet, and I'm looking at this guy. And he goes, "Son, you do the reading?" And I just looked at him. I was like, "No, sir, I did not." And he goes, "Get the fuck out of here." And don't let the door hit your ass on the way out.
And then I come find you guys like eating lunch or breakfast at this point, and you're like, you all are not going to
Our
believe
whole
what
class
just
was there.
Yeah, you're not going to believe what just happened to us.
All of us had a nice
God.
little 10 a.m. brunch together because we got kicked out of class for not doing the reading.
Yeah.
I didn't miss a single reading for that class
After that, yeah, no,
No way.
that's funny. Oh yeah, and I had a class with him a semester, or maybe a quarter or semester after or whatever, and yeah, it was interesting taking a natural law philosophy class. I am not a natural law person. I don't even know like what breed of philosophy I belong to, but I don't think it's that one. But he was great though. I mean, like I said, as you know, I matched him one day, and I earned his respect.
Yep.
It was I think I've told this story on this podcast before, but I'll tell it again because it's really one of my better ones, to be honest with you. And also, it was like, again, one of the best respect gaining stories I think I've ever done. But so it was summertime, September still, and so we're in class, and I show up with my Birkenstocks on, and I'm like leaning back, so my feet are kind of up, and he makes some like joke about me wearing Birkenstocks and being a hippie, and I told him I'm from Maine. He goes, "You sure you're not from Vermont? Like, you hippie, like you probably eat granola or whatever, you fucking hippie, blah blah blah, like something, you fucking hippie." And then now look at me, I've got long hair and and a ponytail, and I am a fucking hippie. But
That's probably a direct quote from him too.
It was.
That dude did not mince words.
No, he didn't. He did not. And like I said, I'm not mincing words at all. Definitely direct quotes. And the next day, I was talking to my mom on the phone, and they were coming down for like family weekend or just to visit or to drop some stuff off. And I said, "Hey, can you get me a bag of granola, like a really big honking bag with like big pieces in it? I said, I got to do something. You know, this professor of mine was calling me a hippie. I got to go prove a point.
Yeah.
I got to go do something about this. And because I knew also Bob would probably get a kick out of it too, you know? And also I just wanted to derail class a couple minutes. And so I walk in with my Birkenstocks on Monday for the next class, and I look at him dead in the eye. I drop my bag in my chair, and I open up the backpack and take out this big, you know, like gallon-sized bag of just straight granola, like big, like crunchy granola, product of Maine or something. And I think that's all the writing that was on it in like big print letter. And so I drop it, and it has some weight to it, so I drop it. He's looking down at his attendance book, and I drop it so it makes a loud thud. And he looks up, and I go, "Hey, professor, do you want any granola?" And he just fucking started dying laughing, and we all did. The whole class laughed, and you know, it was a great laugh. And from that point on, you know, he was like, "Wow, like you had my respect." And actually, funny enough, his kid actually was in our class, and I didn't realize until like the last semester of senior year that they were related.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to figure. I had no idea. No one. And then like Lucas or somebody's like, "Yeah, that's Bob Anderson's kid." I'm like, "What?" Yeah, but anyway, regardless, he goes, "Yeah, you know that thing you did with the granola? My dad loves you. He think no one's ever stood up to him like that before." I'm like, "Nice." And it wasn't really standing up. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful, but like it's at the point you're at the point in life where you can really kind of test the give and take and the push and pull, you know, of that type of situation. It was just it was all in good fun. It was all in good fun, you know.
I always liked that about him and like some of the other professors that we had there too. Is they just like got it, you know, and like they weren't like they were aware of their position in life, but they were also aware of our position in life too,
and that we weren't morons. Like we were, like they met us halfway.
Yeah,
it was like, yes, we know more than you, but you're not idiots. We're gonna respect like you guys are young, impressionable minds, and we're going to try to get you to the place where you want to go. And I never felt like everybody goes, "Oh, well, like these liberal professors," and like, yeah, some of our professors were liberal politically leaning, but I never overly felt like they were trying to push their views onto me. I never felt that. And I felt they did a good job separating their personal shit from their professional shit.
Absolutely.
Which I respect tremendously.
Yeah, you know, very, very rarely, I'm sure if I like look back on it, there might have been like a time or two where someone, you know, because it's hard to, when you're in that kind of a position, it's hard to not let your biases show and let your opinions show.
Of course.
But again, for the most part, like they were all really, really good about it. And even still, like if they did tell us their opinion, they'd be like, "Hey, this is my opinion. Do what
exactly.
you will." And if you
like
push
this is
back
separate.
on it,
This is separate from like what I'm teaching today. This is my opinion. Right? Exactly.
and if you push back on it, they weren't afraid of the pushback, and they weren't afraid to like talk to you about it too, and like kind of talk their shit out. And it was good.
Yeah, like I said, it was very, very appropriate way to do things. I feel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Couldn't do it any other way, really. And I mean, so. That aside, we had some great people that set us up for, you know, success. And so for you more directly, I guess, in certain ways, because you were literally teaching, you know, students. And so, you know, what do you think in part, you know, now that you've been a few years in education, and I mean, at least you got to teach like a normal year, or even with student teaching, you know, easy there, killer. But now that you've gone through the pandemic teaching, you've gone through a couple of years of normal teaching, like where do you kind of feel the state of? I mean, and you can break this down by part, and obviously don't say anything that's going to get yourself in trouble at work.
God.
But
I love my job and I love the people I work with.
Yep, there you go, attaboy. But no, what do you think like the state of education is you know in the United States, and I guess on a smaller scale, like you know New Hampshire, because that's where you're at, you know, or your corner of New Hampshire even.
Yeah, that's probably more appropriate. The corner of New Hampshire,
right? Because it's a big state, you know.
It is.
When you break it down to education districts.
It's a big, small state.
Yep.
And I would say one of the problems, well, sometimes it's a problem, sometimes it's a benefit. But one of the things that we have in this country that really I don't think anywhere else in the world has is that from a federal level, we don't have any sort of like directive on what we're doing for education. There's no, I mean, there's the Common Core, but there's really no federal directive on curriculum. It's just every state can do what they want.
Right. Well, and I mean, I guess that's unique to our political system too. 10th Amendment being whatever is not mentioned in the Constitution is left up to the states.
It is.
And I think that kind of embodies that same type of spirit that we don't want to, we want to give you some guidance, but we don't want to give you too much guidance, which is, I think, good in certain aspects and not in others.
It's one of those,
just my opinion, obviously, but
it's one of those tough things too, because we didn't have public schools in 1787 to 1797 when the Constitution was ratified and the Bill of Rights were.
When did the first real public education start? Like, oh man, like you had one-room schoolhouses, but
St. A's education department did not do me wrong on this. They taught me this.
Just forget. It's okay.
I have since forgotten.
Hey, this is.
I want to say like the 1820s, 30s, like Horace Mann in Massachusetts. Is probably your first.
No, that's right. No, that
schooling.
checks out. Now that, the history hamster started running on its wheel again in my brain. And you know what? Now that you mention it, the first public education was in the state of Massachusetts was big on being the first and a lot of that type of stuff, actually, believe it or not, which is, again, like the cool thing about being in New England, where the old world, like a lot of like the stuff that like they do in this country started because we started those customs or whatever it is long ago.
This will ruffle some feathers in Virginia too, but Massachusetts is the birthplace of the Revolution.
Yeah, it is. Of course it
Virginia.
is. No, it is. I mean, like, Sons of Liberty literally kicked off the revolution. Like, if they weren't constantly instigating, and like I said, being a Mainer, which would have been Massachusetts at the time, we fought. We have fort. Like, I'll take you by it later. The oldest wooden fort still standing in America, Fort Western.
Nice.
Is down the hill.
Oh, hell yeah.
It was a resupply depot. Didn't see any major battles. Benedict Arnold stayed there when he came up to Quebec City during that whole. Way. I mean, he came up right through Maine. I'm going to do an episode on it eventually.
Oh, that'd be cool.
I mentioned it in my Augusta, Maine episodes, but you could do an episode on that all its own. I have a whole book about it upstairs. I'll even let you borrow if you want to read it.
I'd love that.
It's fantastic. Like, I mean, the journey itself is a great story. It was actually a miserable experience for those who were on it because they ran out of food. They thought maps were so shitty back then that they didn't really know like how true a lot of distances were. And you know how it took forever to get anywhere back in colonial America. And so you're going through the Maine wilderness to Quebec City. That's hundreds of miles, thousands of miles.
Good luck.
Yeah, and they ended up having to eat their own shoes, like I said, and like they ended up having to meet up with another force. They almost pulled it off, actually, which was kind of crazy because it was like the Quebecois, the French that were left over from the French and Indian War, had no love. They had no love for their British occupiers, and so they were really hoping things were going to go a different way than what they did. But I don't know. It's like one of the many what could have been. We could have been if we had done that. If we had won that battle, we could have had Canada. Yeah. We could have had Quebec. That talk about changing the whole. I mean, that would have been awesome. Yeah. I think Quebec's great. So,
I still gotta get up there sometime. I want to get to like Quebec, Montreal, some of those like the Eastern Canadian.
Let's go.
Like Vancouver too.
I also want to go to. Speaking of that Oak Island too. I mean, I'm big on that whole thing. I remember when you guys came into my room one day and they're like, "What are you guys watching?" I'm like, "The Curse of Oak Island." You ever heard of it? And they're like, "No." And then like you, Lucas, and Chap ended up staying for like multiple hours past what you thought you were gonna end up staying for. Like I think you guys had just stopped in for a quick, "Hey, how you doing?" Ended up staying for like the rest of the day.
Probably didn't do a paper I was supposed to do either, but I learned something.
Yeah, you did. Well, that's the crazy thing, and see, that's what I mean. I guess we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but that's okay. The history thing, like at Oak Island, Jake, they have found bones from people that lived somewhere in the the Mediterranean part of like former what today is Israel, Jordan, Palestine, And so if somebody from the and I believe it, I think about the Knights Templar connection. The Knights Templar, people forget, like outside of like what you see on popular media about the Knights Templar, they were really the first corporate entity. Yeah. Really. They kicked off like capitalism in a lot of ways. Like they were the first real like big opportunists. Religious opportunists, I guess if you want to call them that, because like they had they had the protection end covered because they were knights. Oh, yeah. They were really incredible fighters. They were incredible science. They did a lot of discovery because they worked a lot. They had, what I'm getting at is they had Arab membership, Arab Christians. You look Arab, but in your religious practice is Catholic.
Yeah, they didn't discriminate on I mean,
they did, but like, in their chapters that were in the Middle East, the people that were there looked like, you had Middle Eastern brothers.
Like when you talk about like race,
right.
Like today it means something completely different than
what it did back then.
Yeah. Like,
I'm just talking about white Europeans versus more tan Middle Eastern, like the Mediterranean folk. Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Arabs, the Syrians, and all the other people that are down there too.
Right. I mean, there's so many different groups.
Yeah.
Syrians, Armenians, everybody. You know what I mean? There's so many different.
Yeah. One of the things too that I've been like nerding out about my my Crusades history lately.
Yeah.
And
a wild time of history. There were what, 7 or 8 of them?
Yeah. I was watching this, like, there's a really great YouTube channel called Kings and Generals, and they put out like just some amazing content, and they've got, I think, like 3 or 4 videos now that are about like 30 to 40 minutes a piece on the Third Crusade. And they had this one that's like 45 minutes long about Saladin.
Mm-hmm.
So I was watching this thing about him and just like how important he was to the Arab and the Muslim world, but also to the Christian world too. Like, Europeans respected the shit out of this guy because not only was he an amazing fighter, but he like didn't look down on them as like, oh, you guys are just like infidels. How like a lot of like Europeans also look down on the Arabs in the first 2 crusades.
Right, like you're backwards,
you guys
whatever.
are just like heathens and Saracens, like you barbarians, basically.
Yeah, right. Like we have nothing to learn from you. When in reality, these folks are out here doing some of the most, prolific changes in sailing.
Yeah.
They created the astrolabe and all this other stuff that allows like Columbus to come to the New World and all this other, age of exploration type shit a few hundred years later.
The information exchange that happened in the Third Crusade as a result of Saladin going out and fighting these guys and treating them with respect
is huge.
Oh my God.
Is arguably one of the biggest, one of the most impactful events for European history.
Yep. And the only reason that some of these like some of the Christian holy sites and these like really ancient cities like Antioch and Jerusalem and places like that are still intact is because of Saladin's empire that he amassed, and he put in special protections for.
Yeah, because they would have torn that shit down.
Yeah.
Like the I'm trying to think of the name of the place, but it's in the third Indiana Jones movie. You know, that big the big desert temple there at the end of the movie. It's a real place, case in point. That's not just a movie set. Like, that is a real fucking place. You can go visit it. And that's on my list of... I wish we could go to Egypt in these places.
Yes.
I mean, while you can, I don't feel safe doing it at this point in history.
Oh, no.
Just because that part of the world is, well, looking like I do and going to that part of the world, it's not always exactly the most ideal thing. But that being said, though, I do hope to get to some of these places someday. And I think, like I said, the whole, like, I mean... Regardless, I mean, being a cat practicing or a semi-practicing Catholic aside, is the cool thing about like the interwoven part of like the church's history being not just the Catholic Church, but all the 3 major religions that claim the same city as their like holy city. I think that's wild. From like again, not even from a religious standpoint, but from a historical standpoint. I mean, and it closely relates to what we're talking about with the Crusades. Really, if you think about it, I mean, that's the whole reason for the season, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But getting back to education, and so you were saying like there's no real directive.
Derail.
Yeah, I mean, we're good at that, dude. I like I said, as much as I'm the host and I'm supposed to keep things on tangent and prevent that from happening, I'm also the biggest enabler of side tangents on this show. But it's fine because you learned something.
We love a good derail.
But anyway, so like, you said like there's no comment, no real, I mean, other than the Common Core, it's, and you're right. Like, I felt that way. That's true. Like a lot of like, even to like down to like your city, like getting back to New Hampshire, like your cities and towns have their own education culture. In the sense that, that's not how we do things here. Or like, well, this is our school district and we do things a little bit differently out here. Like, and I mean, I felt that culture a little bit because, like, I mean, as folks remember who listen to the podcast, I did work in education for a year, given I was basically like the equivalent of an educational scab. But, it's okay, but like, no, I wasn't part of like the teachers union or anything like that. Like, nor was I given the option to.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, that's another topic for another day on too. I'm not even going to touch that one. Public sector unions at all. I'm just going to leave that one alone. But that being said,
I love my union
and the people in it. Yep,
I do.
Yep. All right on. But that being said, it's just like at a local level though, there's different cultures.
It's tough,
and you've worked in different areas. So if you could go into that too,
man, so I'm in my. Oh God. So this is my 4th year of teaching. All the experience that I have.
Hey,
such an authority. But
with the last few years that we've gone through, you're an authority on something anyway. I don't know if it's exactly but you're an authority. Give yourself a little bit of credit, dude.
I've done so this is my 4th year in my 3rd school.
Yes.
And not really by
and
choice.
Not like you got like run out of town or not to clarify, to qualify.
Yes, I've actually never been fired from a job in my entire life, believe it or not. Going back to high school, I've never been fired from a
Believe
job
it or
in my
not. No,
life.
that's true. That's true.
But no, so actually, like, one of the reasons that I stuck around in New Hampshire was it was what I knew, and I was just, by the time we graduated, man, I was so burned out from school.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I could tell.
Oh no,
we all were.
I didn't want to go to grad school or anything like that. Which,
Why do you think I didn't?
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
hey, same.
and then so back where my folks live in Rhode Island, I think at the time, at least, it's certainly different now, just because they're hurting for teaching jobs, just like everywhere else in the country. But
Right.
at the time, they wanted you to have a master's within 3 years of getting a job, and I was like, hell no.
There are a bunch
Not
of
unless they're
the
willing to
further
pay for
south,
it. Hell no.
the funnier they are with requirements for
Yeah.
education. I was talking with a gal and who I worked with, and she was saying, "Yeah, I applied for an elementary job in Portland, Maine, and they wanted me to have my master's to teach first grade." And I said, "That's funny. That's a good one."
Yeah.
You're
No way.
teaching kids how to draw letters, like, not to demean that by any means, but
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, I don't know how many, for what you get paid as an elementary school teacher. You got to qualify,
yeah.
you know, some of that money somewhere. You got to make up the difference.
I mean, the things that those
You know?
kindergarten, first, and second grade teachers are doing, they're working freaking miracles, man.
Yeah, they are.
My little 6-year-old brother was talking to me on a game the other night, telling me that he was like, I just learned how to tell the difference between things. I was like, what are you talking about? He was like, I learned how to tell the difference between things. I was like, you didn't know how to do that already? He's like, no, like 7 minus 4 is 3. I learned how to tell the difference between things. I was like, oh, okay. Like
subtraction, like math.
Yes,
Yeah.
the difference. He must have been learning word problems or something like
Yeah,
that. But
yeah,
it,
yeah.
like, it
And
just
they're
like
like,
hit
what
me.
is-
I was like,
And difference is the da-da-da-da
Yeah.
between da-da-da-da. Yeah,
it just like hit me. And I was like, I can't believe like he didn't know that, but he's so young, you know.
Yeah,
And
he was,
then,
yeah.
You know, I had to be an ass later, and I was like, well, can you compare things? And he just goes, Jacob, you know I don't know what that means.
I love
was like,
the
"I'm sorry,
matter of
man."
factness
Oh,
of
yeah.
it. Jacob, you know I don't know what that.
The mind of a 6-year-old, man.
Dude, it's so funny. And that's why I honestly, you know, I loved working in the middle. Honestly, if I could go back, I'd work in the middle school
Oh,
again.
yeah.
Would I prefer being with high school kids? Of course I would be. Because
Yep.
that's where I'm most comfortable, you know, especially, you know, like because of coaching and everything, you know,
Oh, yeah.
coaching soccer and everything like that. And they're a little bit older, so you can get away with a little bit more in terms of like what type of things you can talk about, like using like rap and poetry and stuff like that. A lot of the lyrics are not suitable for 7th graders, but they are more suitable for someone who is, you know, 17 or 18 years old. I mean, you can get away with a few more, like, and you know what I mean by get away with a few more things. It's like a little bit more is acceptable because they're a little bit older and more mature. Not
And
to say,
for the most part, you can reason with them too.
yes. Well, you can
the
reason with
most
the middle schoolers too. To be honest
can.
with you, they're
You
pretty
actually
good.
can.
They're honestly, my kids were great, and
Yep.
like I said, I'd take them back in a heartbeat. I ended up coaching some of them as 9th graders,
Oh, that's awesome.
which was cool this year. Yeah, don't know if I'll be able to keep up with that with everything going on with school and everything this year, but
Yeah.
I don't, you know. But that being said, it you know, it's a great experience. Like I said, I love working with kids. As so do you. It's like it's really you know, why did you get into it, to be honest with you? I mean, what was the real thing? I mean, other than you know, it feels good at the end of the day, but like, you know, what was like what really, you know, got you? Because like I said, you're asked to really kind of babysit somebody, you know, and some potential babysit somebody's kids while they're at work for 7, and that's what a lot of the parents expect you to do, even though that's not what you're doing. But you know what I mean.
Yep.
Like,
I've actually gotten asked for parenting advice before, even though I have no kids of my own that I know of.
that I know of, yeah, allegedly.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, I'm joking.
Big Al, if you're listening to this, I don't have any kids.
Alleged or otherwise.
Yep. But no, man, like this is one of those things I've grappled with it for a long time, and I always get asked this too
Yeah.
by my students
Yep.
because they want to know, and they want to make sure the person sitting in front of them for the next 180 days or so isn't just some like
Bum.
some boob, you know. And
That's how I felt too. That was.
oh yeah,
I had to act a little differently than you though, because I had nothing.
my first year teaching was like, even though I had student taught and I'd had
Right.
internships the years previous, shout
Right.
out to the St. A's Education Department for that, by the way. Getting us out in classrooms. My freshman year, I was out in a middle school classroom. So I had that experience, but then going into my first year teaching, it was like I was not prepared for it.
Yeah.
Not they didn't do a good job preparing me for it, like literally, but I was just like
But you were also at a
emotionally
pretty
and spiritually not prepared
you
for
were
it.
also at a pretty what's the right word I'm looking for to describe the district you were teaching in? I don't just want to say rural because that doesn't really give it the right connotation, but
No,
it was
it doesn't. High needs. The state has actually classified it as a
yes,
district.
high needs district. Yes, thank you.
The district
yes.
and the school that I worked at is now classified by the state of New Hampshire as a high needs school, whatever that means.
Does that mean they're just going to dump more money on it and expect it to solve itself?
Probably not, which is a shame because
Because that would actually help the problem out a little bit. If
money actually would. So just to clarify, my first job at this district, they were the only ones that would even give me the time of day for an interview. I had 2 interviews.
Yeah, we got jobs in a very difficult hiring climate.
We did.
2019, spring summer 2019 was a tough time to get a job. Like the fact that I got a job on a presidential campaign was incredible.
Yeah.
The fact that you and I both had jobs before we graduated, which was incredible.
Yep.
We were a few of many that actually had jobs before graduation, and look at us now.
Yep, exactly. And so we, in terms of like just simple resources like computers,
Yes.
like you need computers and
Like, are we talking like educator laptops or student laptops or both? Okay, both. Yep.
so the
Just tools.
so the device that they gave me was probably as old as one of my brothers, 2000, 2001, something like that was when this
Oh,
it was
boy.
and it was a refurbished.
So what you're
computer.
saying is there could have been some World Trade Centers still standing when this thing was made.
Probably.
That's crazy.
Actually, I had my own. Thank God I had my own personal laptop, and I just like brought that in and worked on that. And I used this other one as basically a projector, is what this thing was.
Yeah.
But my students didn't have any devices of their own. I had 2 desktop computers, functioning desktop computers in my room. I had 2 that didn't work, 2 that did work, and that was like our. That's basically all we had in terms of technology. We had like an old school projector, and. The kids really had nothing. It was all like old school paper and pencil, which I'm cool with. Especially now, like if you told me like I could go teach somewhere that's doing everything on paper and pencil, give me that. Like nine times out of 10.
They used COVID to get rid of to really get rid of pencil and paperwork.
Yeah.
Now everything's on the computers, and
Yep.
Well, so at the time teaching English, that was cool with me because I couldn't read their handwriting.
Yes.
So I was good with that. But for other things, it sterilizes certain activities.
It does. So like that first year I was teaching, it was normal-ish. I mean, there were certainly like social problems and stuff in the school.
Right.
Really small school too.
How many kids, if you remember?
My second year there, our graduating class was 22.
Shoot, that's tiny, boy.
Yes, it is.
That's real tiny.
I went to high school on a Navy base, and that was about the size of my high school there too.
Right.
If I had stayed there for all 4 years of high school, my graduating class probably would have been around there, like 22, 23, something like that.
That's crazy. Well,
Yeah.
and that's actually the funny thing. I mean, you being, I guess, a Navy brat is the technical term for that, which I learned the other day, which was kind of funny. He's like, yeah, I was a Navy brat. And I was like, is that like when you're moved around? He's like, yeah, okay. I'm like, all right, cool. Yeah, I have a friend that did that. And I was like, yeah, you lived in Italy.
Yes.
You lived but the more
Really great time.
more importantly to this podcast, though, means technically you qualify as being a Maine resident because you did live in Maine for a time.
did.
You lived when your dad was at Brunswick Naval Air Station.
Yep. Lived in Brunswick, Maine for 2.5 years.
See, that was one of the things we was like, yeah, actually, like.
And I actually
I lived
was
in
of
Maine.
school age in Brunswick. I did most of my kindergarten year in Brunswick.
See, you like I said, hey, all the great people call Maine home once in a while. Hey,
I love Brunswick. That whole area, Brunswick and Freeport, is just
that's
such a
the
nice
crazy
place.
thing about that area now is that in terms of what I'd call the southern Maine line has pushed up from Portland and is now resting in between Freeport and Brunswick now.
Yeah, a lot
in
of
my
the
opinion,
commercialization and stuff
Yeah.
there.
I'm sure you kind of see it, and I'm sure, I know your younger brother's been up here in college, and I'm sure you've been up a couple times and seen things, that have changed a little bit.
Old Town in Orono, Maine's a lot different than Freeport, Maine.
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Old Town in Orono's a lot closer to Augusta than just not in terms of distance, but just in terms of like how Maine it is. That's Maine, right? Like
it's.
Dude, I got off the exit what was it 109? I got off that exit.
Yep.
And I was like, I'm in Maine right now.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, boy.
And like I like that though, like the flavor and the characters. Same thing in New Hampshire too. Like
Oh yeah.
like once you get away from like Nashua and some of like in Salem, like the border areas in New Hampshire, like where
That's
I'm living,
the part. Honestly, dude, that's kind of the part of New Hampshire that ruins it for me.
Yep.
Is the amount. It's basically like southern New
Massholes.
Hampshire is turning into like a literally like just like a border situation. Is that well, we really can't afford to live in Massachusetts, but our jobs are in Massachusetts.
Yep.
So
I will say though, those towns' chamber of commerces are doing a great job with marketing their towns to those people.
Oh,
and those
yeah, they
towns
are.
have blown.
yeah,
up
they have.
just
And
in the last
the
couple of
construction
years.
when I was down there last was insane.
Yep.
I was in Salem, Pembroke, all those towns right on the
Mhm.
border there, and it's Wyndham. Well, actually, we're
Go Jags.
Yep. Right on. Shoot, yeah, no, it's crazy how all those areas have really kind of changed. And so, your school, what age group are you teaching?
So currently I've got mostly 10th graders, and then in my electives, just like a pretty good mix of 11th and 12th graders. No freshmen.
Yep, no froshies.
And that is what it is. But
yeah, right.
previously I've had, so like in my school last year, I worked in a town up by the seacoast, and really like working class town, like really, really good people in that town. And the kids, man, those kids were like probably some of the most polite and like genuinely polite kids I've ever come across in my life. And I had all 11th graders last year. And that's I would say is probably the toughest age group other than freshmen
11,
to deal with, just because they're like, you've got half of them that act their age, which is good. Like you're like ready to deal with kids that act their age, but
Right.
then you have like a quarter of them that are acting like way older than they actually are, for better or worse. And you've got another quarter of them that are still mentally stuck in 9th grade, and it's really, really tough.
Oh, it's the spread, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're trying to address a huge spread of different personalities of kids.
Yeah, but
on top of maturities.
Oh yeah, and that town I was in was it was close enough to UNH that some of the people living there would have been like UNH professors, like younger UNH professors and staff, and the other half of the town's like just like working class New Hampshire, and you got that like mix of kids, and you'd think there would be some like social like clash between them, and there wasn't. It was like a really
kind
cohesive social group.
Yeah, it was like co-harmony,
and just like really like, for the most part, of course, like really well raised kids, and like they were.
That's nice. That's special, dude.
Even if they're like, their work ethic wasn't the greatest, they were still really like polite, and like socially they were like really like nice and accepting of their peers too. Which is all you can ask for.
Yeah,
so it's not creating any extra problems for you.
That's exactly it. And I mean, like them just getting along, and I think that's one of the biggest things I saw. Like, and I guess like my teaching experience was going to be a real different from everybody else's. Is that like kids couldn't even really like be near each other.
No.
Like they had to be like at their desk. So like all the behavior stuff that like you guys usually have, I never had to. Like I had a couple like problems. I never had to send a kid to the office. I threatened it once.
Yeah,
but they knew not. I laid things.
All it takes.
I laid things down well enough, and I mean, you know me, Jake. I laid things down well enough that they really didn't fuck with me too bad. They just kind of were like, "He's here. He." At the end of the day, this guy is better off being our friend than being our enemy, because they're a lot worse. They're a lot worse here, you
Absolutely.
know. And then I mean, like that's one thing I feel like up here that's too bad, is that they've really kind of fallen in like this is our way of doing things, and this is how we do things. And even if we're falling short, too bad, because this is the way we do things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, that's great for you guys who are taking salaries, but for these kids who are, starting their formation journeys of becoming people and are going to end up having to like lead this society or this town or this city or whatever, you're fucking yourselves.
Yep. And
all to make your job easier. That's great. Good for you, I guess.
And that actually, if you'll allow me, that allows me to circle back to, a question you asked me earlier, like why did I get into teaching?
Yeah.
That's been something that I've actually struggled with formulating a good response to, because my kids always ask me the first day of school, or the first day of like new classes, if it's a semester class, last 5 minutes, I always like tell kids, like, I'm going to take the teacher hat off for a few minutes. You guys can ask me anything you want, and as long as it's school appropriate, I'll answer it.
Yep.
Like, no holds barred.
Yep.
Almost always the first question I get is, why'd you want to be a teacher?
Yep. That makes sense.
And I've really struggled with formulating why, because my original response was like, well, I want to help people, and I like working with kids because they're more honest with you than adults are for the most part.
Yep. Can be, definitely, yeah.
I like history, so here's a good way to put it all together. I'll be a social studies teacher.
Yep, perfect.
And I've always had these like subconscious thoughts of like what's really going on here, and like why am I really here?
Yeah, like what's my purpose in this whole shaboodle? Yep.
Something that I've been thinking about more with, like, my brief experience that I've had is you have this conflict between schooling and education, and also between education and education incorporated is what I've kind of come to term them as.
Yep.
And I've seen this everywhere that I've been, and I'm sure that, I'm making generalizing statements here, so I'm sure that there's someone somewhere that doesn't have to deal with this, but you always have this push from people, like all these new initiatives and things like that, to get kids more engaged in school. Like, schools are paying like hundreds of thousands, if not even close to like millions of dollars for these
taxpayer money.
Yes. Yes. For these like third party groups to come in, take a look at the school, tell you what's wrong with it, tell you like, oh, if you only used our program and our materials, this is how you could fix it. And it's like, it's convoluted and it's kind of silly for the most part. There are some things that I think have been helpful,
right?
I'm sure, but for the most part, I just think it's kind of convoluted. Because really, like, people have gotten away from like just treating kids as human beings.
Yeah, instead of treating them. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, yep.
And then as a social studies teacher too, I've been like fighting with this for the last couple of years, and it wasn't until I got to where I currently am, and I've had the pleasure of working with some really, really great people this year.
Yeah, you've mentioned that in our side conversations.
Yeah,
too.
some people that are really, really smart. Not that I haven't worked with smart people everywhere.
No, but like this group is pretty top notch. Yeah,
they are. They're very, very sharp. My mentor teacher this year has actually been like, man, he's been so helpful, and he's kind of helped me put it into like, basically put it into words. So I've been feeling for the last couple of years, like my job as a social studies teacher is to like teach emphasis on the social studies. So like, as one thing I've done this year, it's been like really awesome, is I gave my kids, and I read for them are you familiar with Martin Luther King's Drum Major sermon?
Yes. Yep.
Oh yeah, dude. Awesome stuff. So
like, aside from, don't get me wrong, I Have a Dream is a great speech. It's one of the GOAT speeches, I guess, if you will, along with like, Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address and a few of the other, like, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And I am a jelly donut. And that aside from that type of stuff, like that is what there. There are some really great like side sermons of a lot of people, like even like, not to get on the other side, I guess, of the coin, even some of Malcolm X's side stuff that isn't overtly violent is actually pretty fantastic too. Very brilliant men living in the same time, fighting for really the same thing in a very different way.
Yep. And that's something that's really important.
And that's
too,
the crazy. And I don't think we talk about. Either of them enough.
No.
In the
for
sense,
different reasons.
for different. Yeah, exactly. Correct.
But yeah, so I gave this, it's an excerpt of this sermon. 'Cause I think the whole sermon's probably like 40, 45 minutes.
I'm sure.
So I gave an excerpt of this sermon to the kids, and I read it out loud for them and just had them like follow along.
Mm-hmm.
And for anyone not familiar with it, basically, it's King, so he's going to talk about race. He's going to talk about religion, because that's like, that's his deal.
Right. But he's a pastor, so I mean, you're going to have to expect that.
Exactly. But he gets into like, basically as human beings, he says that we're all motivated by what he calls the drum major, and it's like the desire that everybody has to like lead others and be out in front and kind of perceive themselves as better than others.
Mm-hmm.
And
because I'm the leader, I'm the
exactly
right.
And he has like this little aside in his sermon where he talks about like, one of the times he was in jail, and he was like, I always like to do a little preaching when I'm in jail. So he mentions that he was talking to like some of the white prison guards there, and he was asking them like basically to list off some of their problems, and they're all listing off these economic problems.
Yeah.
He's like, man, you guys should be out here marching with us, not fighting against us. We got this. By we, I mean like King talking about like Black Americans. He's saying like, we got the same problems as you guys. Like, you should be out here marching with us. So it's like basically he's getting at that we're not all that different. However, there's the behavior piece that motivates us, and I think that by mixing in some of the psychology, and I've done a day where I've just said like, we're not going to do any history today. We're just going to talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I had kids like list out like, where are some of your like your basic, the basic things you need. And it's, the food, water, shelter, clothing, job, money, all that good stuff.
Right.
And then we get into talking about like Maslow says we need to feed our egos. Like, what does he mean by that? And, just getting kids to think about that kind of stuff. Just the basic level. I'm not asking kids in a history class to do much with psychology, because that's not the point of it. But just having like a basic understanding of that has allowed, just what I've seen this year, has allowed kids to make way better connections with the materials
and making
in
the
front of
connections themselves
Yep.
too. You're not telling them what the connection is.
Exactly.
They're doing it themselves through your guidance, perhaps, but not. You're not doing it for them. They're doing the hard part. They're doing the critical thinking, or the hard part of it, the real deep thinking. They're the ones doing that part, which is, I think, the whole point of education.
It
is you're guiding them to a point, and again, by the time you get to high school, for the majority of students, you should be at a point where you're being guided to the higher levels of thinking, and that's what I was trying to tell my kids when
I would say at least when you're in 11th grade, that's where you should be.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. I mean, 9th and 10th grade is 9th and 10th grade.
That's about schooling.
That's
still
a very developmental time.
Yep.
Don't get me wrong. And I mean, don't get me wrong. You're still developing long through even when you're into college and beyond. Don't get me wrong.
Yep.
It doesn't end there. But like I did the same thing with some of my kids. We used to do a 15-minute quick write first 15 minutes of class, and one of the time I'd ask them like, how was your vacation? Stuff like that. Easy shit.
Yeah.
But then I'd also ask them, for seventh grade you, what is the meaning of life? I don't know what you're asking, Mr. Dumont. What does life mean to you? What brings you joy? What brings you sadness? Yeah. And I've never thought about that before. And that's the one thing I did get at I did do parent-teacher conferences. I don't know if I was supposed to or not, but I did.
Those are my favorite.
I really enjoy those.
That's one of my favorite times.
Unfortunately, the one critique of parent-teacher conferences I will say is that the parents of the kids that need to be there aren't always there.
Yep.
It's the ones, and unfortunately, the ones that usually show up are the ones that have an A+.
Yep.
And I go, and then when you tell them your kid's great, they're perfect, and you go,
yeah,
well, they have a 93 and not a 100.
Oh, yeah.
I go, you almost want to say, shut the fuck up.
Yep.
Your kid's gonna be fine.
I've run into some of that this year.
You know what? I'm not saying like don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, if you have a 97, of course you could get 100. Of course you could figure out a way to get 3 points.
I'm never gonna tell a kid to like not keep working, like not fight for what they want, but
let's not nitpick over bullshit here.
So that's like the other thing too is what I've really been thinking about is there's this whole idea of like schooling versus education, and I think your elementary, your formative years are certainly just about like schooling, getting you into like this is how you get into like a work routine. This is how you
learn to learn.
Yep, exactly. And then by the time you're like a little older, you can start getting into like actually educating yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes like kids get lost in the schooling factor of it, and not so much that like I've learned something here.
Right.
And it's not always like what have I learned in a classroom. Abraham Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address, and it was about healing and getting the nation more morally involved in the Civil War and yada yada yada. But I got a 75 on this test. This is awful. I've done terrible. It's like, no, dog, like you're average. Like that's okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes one of the things you have to learn is that even if you are an A student, you're gonna screw up every once in a while.
Yeah,
and that's
you're not.
fine,
You're
and that's
not. You're
something
not
you
going to
gotta
be an
learn.
A student. Unfortunately, like some people aren't A students in everything they do. Like
Yeah.
there's a reason why you have two different parts of your brain. Some people are more creative. Some people are more, specific to like technicalities, mathematics, and the like, and are more technical and hands on. And it's just what did you get for what did you get for a draw? What were you interested in as a kid? What programs did your parents put you in? Did you watch a lot of TV? Like what went into your upbringing? And that's why when you get kids that are in the middle school level that can't do sentences, you look at the elementary levels and you go, what are you doing down there?
Yeah, exactly.
And you can't blame it all on the elementary teachers by any means. You got to blame it on the parents to some capacity as well. I think it's unrealistic as a parent, and this might be controversial, but it's unrealistic to be a parent and expect everything your child needs to learn in life will be taught at school. There's an unrealistic expectation.
That's certainly not going to happen. I got to actually shout out my mother. God bless her.
Tammy.
Tammy, I love you. But I got to shout her out because when I was younger, this is before I got into school.
Yeah.
She was actually, funny enough, she was going to school to be an elementary school teacher. And that didn't turn out so well for her, but she's doing good now. But she was big on like giving me like books, and even if like I'm a dumb 2-year-old, I'm not gonna be able to read sentences or words or anything like that, but just like having access to them and like looking at them, and then eventually like before I got to school, I knew how to read, just at a very basic level, not that I was some like kind of.
Oh yeah, no, me too. Like
genius.
I could
still
read.
an idiot,
I could read fucking picture books.
Oh yeah,
in kindergarten.
One fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish. My first grade brother loves that stuff, and I asked him why. He was like, "Well, it's easy to read."
Of course, yeah.
That's why I liked it when I was 4, man.
Yeah, right on, dude.
Some Magic Treehouse or something, but
right. Oh,
I used to love those books.
Those books are great. Or the what was it there was somebody under the stairs too, where they shut off the light and they go off to a magic kingdom. I don't remember that one.
Narnia.
No, it wasn't Narnia. It was something else.
That was a closet.
But that was a wardrobe. Yeah. But still, no, some of that. Actually, quick sidebar on that. This at work this week, I was like, you have those like random thoughts that come into your brain, and you're like, what was the name of that fucking movie when I was a kid? And like, so the cool thing about where I work is that all of us are about the same age. I'm the youngest at 26. I mean, in terms of like the oldest guy that works like with us is like I think 32.
That's pretty good.
I mean, with the exception, there's another older guy who comes in and he's like 63. But regardless of that fact,
master or whatever.
Actually, one of the masters that comes in. Nice. But regardless, my cousin's a master at like 30, 33, 32, something like that. But anyway, regardless, all of us are about the same age, so we all have the same like childhood memories in terms of like popular media and TV shows and all that stuff. And so like we were talking about like old Cartoon Network stuff from like Codename Kids Next Door,
God,
Courage. We were like, yo, Courage the Cowardly Dog. Whoever did that show was on some drugs.
Oh yeah.
Like that was a trippy ass.
There's probably a good reason Tammy wouldn't let me watch that.
Probably. I mean, like,
but she let me watch Johnny Bravo though. Which I
tremendous!
I love that show, but I'm like,
baby.
I'm thinking like, Tammy, what were you doing? Like, this dude's like putting the moves on. I mean, maybe she knew what she was doing. This dude's putting the moves on chicks.
Yeah.
And you won't let me watch the funny little pink dog or the funny yellow sponge.
Yeah, the funny yellow sponge was also not a popular choice in our household either. Michelle was adequately against the yellow sponge. Love you, Mom. But no, but the actual thing we were talking about was, and this is actually going to kind of be a cool segue into music, I guess, is I'm pretty sure it was Rock-a-Doodle.
Oh yeah,
where the Elvis chicken or like something. But that's like I'm pretty sure that's Glenn Campbell.
Yeah.
And we're like, holy shit. And then to add another layer to that movie, it's like Dan Burton or Dan Beaton or something like that, who did like all the Land Before Time movies.
Oh, yeah.
All Dogs Go to Heaven.
Yep.
You think about it and you're like, holy shit, that was all in the same animation style.
Land
This is
Before Time was some
all
formative
those
stuff, man.
movies were done by the same dude.
Yep. Land Before Time
Come
was
to
some
find out.
formative stuff.
Yes, fucking right. Oh my god, that stuff was incredible. Yo, this is just gonna be a nostalgia episode towards the end, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
But like, like all
Nothing wrong
those
with
shows,
that.
dude. Like I said, Codename Kids Next Door, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. was
that
another
was some good
great, was
stuff,
another
too.
tremendous
That
television
was
show.
some good stuff.
And I mean, I guess this, I mean, obviously this is just us reminiscing. This is by no way this is like Maine centric or anything like that. But like, dude, like, it's just thinking back on some of that stuff when we were kids, and it's funny because, like some of my coworkers have kids and they're sharing that stuff with their kids now. And it's like, funny how this stuff cycles around, which I guess is the same way it's funny to how, a lot of the music that we listen to cycles around too. That was another big interest of Jake and us, and a very convenient way to segue into this next part of the podcast is, I had to, when I had, was thinking about having Jake on, I knew I had to talk about music in some capacity because that was one of the first early things that we talked about. We had a very, I guess I'll say, large overlap to put it lightly. We both are huge fans of country, classic rock, and everything in between.
If I could real quick.
Yeah, of course, buddy.
I'm going to spin this around and put you in the interview chair.
Yeah, of course.
What was your musical formation growing up?
Oh God,
like, what were you listening to?
Oh God, so
Tony and Michelle.
Oh, so this is actually all right. We got the time for this. All right, this is actually a great story, and again, this is in my opinion. If you want to get to know me. This is one of the biggest parts of that tale. So, I guess early on, I was the first real 5-6 years of my life. I mean, obviously, my parents raised me, but when they were at work, I was raised by my grandmother. And this is my mom's mom, to qualify, up in Skowhegan, Maine. And so that's like why, Skowhegan is my hometown. I was born in the hospital up there. But anyway, to make a long story short, lived with Grandma, and, Grandma Joyce to be specific. And she had a fantastic collection of vinyl records. So we started out listening to big band music. We're listening to anything from Duke Ellington to Frank Sinatra. The Italian crooners were big.
Oh, of course.
Grandpa's side of the family, the Carboni side of the family, Italian as all hell. Left Italy, right before World War II broke out. All that. So, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, the Rat Pack was very big in that household. My mom even said that growing up, like, that type of stuff was big, especially when they went and visited the great-grandparents who were, Grandpa Louis was the guy who came over. So anyway, so there was a lot of that type of stuff. And, as the years go on, there'd be Bobby Darin. Oh, yeah. And then there would also be some, a little bit of country music here and there, like your, Hank Williams and, the older stuff. So there was always like music going on. And then in terms of when I would be with my parents, so that explains all the big band stuff. That explains why Ryan can sing like Frank Sinatra.
Yep.
That explains where all that interest in all the old music of like the 20s to the 60s comes from.
Yeah.
And then my parents. So my dad is, Dad's turning 70 this year.
Wow.
So, that tells you the kind of time frame he lived in. My mom's, and I won't say her, because she's a lady.
Of course not.
I won't say her name on the, I won't say her name. I won't say her age, but she's in her, the 50s, 60s,
Michelle's doing well for herself.
She's doing well for herself, So, the fact of the matter being is that my parents' music tastes really start in the like late, for my dad, he was born in 53, so it was like, you have that 50s stuff, like the early 60s stuff with like Chuck Berry, and like the very early rock and roll stuff, like, and the Sun Records, Johnny Cash stuff. And like that type of stuff. So there's that influence, but also my dad really loved the Beatles. And so like you interject that in. And so that opens up a whole world of pop music with orchestras. And so and then you introduce me to Lennon, McCartney, and that writing style,
and
which
George
is
Harrison
fucking,
too.
and then, but then come to find out there are these two other guys who are completely underrated in the group who are just as fucking qualified in their own rights. Ringo set his own standard of drumming. I've learned under the Ringo style of drumming, of that type of open playing, or cross open playing, which is kind of, like I said, he's legendary. And then George Harrison was a legendary guitar player and also writer in his own right.
Killer songwriter.
Like I said, his stuff with the Traveling Wilburys and his solo stuff too is incredible. But anyway, so I got Abbey Road was the first CD that I was given from my dad. And then my mom was always, into more, and her younger brother, my uncle was into the Def Leppard, more of the 80s hair stuff. Yeah. And so there was some of that influence too. And so you'd see somebody who you'd have these fucking incredible bands all incredible instrument players, and then these crazy frontmen, whether it be like Diamond Dave from Van Halen, or whether it be, what's his face there from, is it Phil, also Phil Collins or something like that or Phil something or other from Def Leppard,
Phil Collins and Joe Elliott up front.
No, those guys. And so then, in AC/DC, you get the Brian Johnson and the Bon Scott stuff.
Yep.
And, you just see this incredible, like the, all this just, this great amalgamation of music. And that's really where it came from. The jam band stuff really came on my own, to be completely honest with you. That was very much more of
Dave Matthews and things like that?
Not really. No, not a big Dave. Not a big Dave. Much earlier. Dave was a little late on the scene, really.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's rooted in the 60s and 70s and early 80s stuff. For me, anyway. And so, like, honestly, in terms of the decade of the 90s is a really fucking navigable decade for me musically. I listen to 90s music, but I don't really listen to it. It's more of, I know artists from the 90s that happen to put songs out in that time. Yeah. It's not like I was, like, really into grunge. Like, I like Nirvana, but I'm not, like, a huge Nirvana fan by any means. Like, I have, like, 5 songs, like Soundgarden and that stuff's all right, but it's, like, Black Hole Sun and all that. Like, I'm always, obviously, like, cool with that, but, like, I don't know, like, I really, like I said, in terms of, like, the stuff that I'm most comfortable with is some of your more, like, twangy, old-school country stuff. As you know, the classic rock, specifically more in the area of the acid rock and the jam band stuff. Specifically being, like, Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead. And, all those guys that come with that front. But also, New Riders of the Purple Sage, which really is a Grateful Dead spinoff in its own right anyway. I mean, obviously Jimi Hendrix, the influence of Bob Dylan's writing, maybe not so much his actual playing, but, and that's just my own opinion. I don't get me wrong. Like I said, Bob Dylan was a great friend of the Grateful Dead. And like when I was at Phil Lesh and Friends, the bass player from the Grateful Dead, over the summer with Lucas and Hannah Robillard, they played Shelter from the Storm. Which is a great Bob Dylan song.
Yeah, it is.
And said, I'll give you a shelter from the storm. But no, I love that song, and it's like, but they played it electric and more like din 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 din.
It had someone that could actually sing.
It's like, yeah, that too. But it's just crazy how how all these different. So basically, I'm like a musical hodgepodge of all this different stuff, and also on top of that too. I got to give a shout out to Chap to getting me into hip hop and sitting me down and having me realize, how important hip hop is to music as an art form and how it really is poetry and motion and a lot of different things like that.
He put me onto some good stuff too.
Yeah, that guy's on. Like I said, in terms of being a connoisseur of hip hop, I don't really have a friend that's much better at it. Yeah. Lucas used to be, but he doesn't listen to that stuff as much anymore. He's definitely much more into the folk stuff as he's talked about, but he used to really be onto some stuff too, and even had some friends who were rappers and stuff like that who put out some. It was like I said, there's like the whole spoken word type stuff of and I'm really big into like the conscious side of like the rap music, like Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul, like all the 90s.
Common back in the day,
also
mid 2000s Common, man.
Yeah, some of that stuff's wild.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, like, obviously, I really do appreciate, like, Biggie, Tupac, without saying, I mean, not just to sound cliche, but, like, both of them are legendary in their own right. Like, we listen to Biggie at work some days, and it's like, you're over there, I got 10 Mac 10s, 9 9s, like, I'm like,
doing electrical work in central Maine.
Yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it. It's fine, It's fine. Don't worry about it. Like I said, music transcends all borders.
It really does.
Thank God it does, because if not, it's really weird for the white kid from Maine to be listening to Biggie Smalls. But no, and it's just like there's some of that stuff, obviously the West Coast influence, but like I'm not really, I don't know, like some of the gangster rap stuff, you kind of lose me. I don't know, like I'm real big on like the Digital Underground and even some of the older stuff with like Slick Rick and I don't know, like and E40 and just like stuff that's different, but especially like down south, like in Texas, the Ghetto Boys, they're big on me. And then like you being from Georgia, I mean, as you know, I love and really appreciate the Atlanta rap scene, especially being Outkast.
Oh yeah.
Lesser in sense the Goody Mob, I guess,
Yeah.
and CeeLo Green, but like especially like the Dungeon Family and
Oh,
like
yeah.
Organized
Oh, yeah.
Noise and as to a larger extent, and like what they did to like I guess to like, make a long story short, Jake, is like it's just really like I said an amalgamation and hodgepodge of just like a musical tapestry woven throughout the years of a bunch of influences coming from grandparents and parents and
Oh,
other
yeah.
family members and also friends.
That's awesome, man.
That's the long version of it. I think I just spent I looked over as either 19 minutes or 10 minutes. I don't know which, but
something like that.
something like that.
we love a good derail. Anyway.
I do, we really do, but I guess it really isn't a derail because it gets us into what
Yeah.
I want to talk about musically, and so. And I, was putting together like a list of things. I was like, Jake and I, we talked about all different types of music, but we always really were the two that bonded over like some twangy ass, good
Oh my
old time
God, yeah.
country music. Whether that be Hank Jr. and some rowdy ass shit.
We had some Philistines for friends, I'm telling you.
They all hated country music and like whatever, that's fine. Like so be it. Like that's good for you, but not for us. Like I said, Jake and I appreciate good barbecue, a beer on the porch, and just like simple living. It's like well, people that listen to country music also have a 13% higher rated depression, and I'm like, yeah, and
So what?
It's funny how math works.
Break off.
Yeah. But anyway, so I asked Jake, and I'm obviously going to share mine too. But like, and I know this is an impossible task when you ask somebody, but like, what were your top 5? And I don't know if this is in any order for you, buddy, but your top 5 country albums of all time. And I know that's an impossible question, but I just wanted to give something nice, juicy, and meaty for folks coming back into the new year. And like I said, I'll also share my albums and give a little reason as to why I picked them. So Jake, we'll start with you, buddy, and then I'll get into mine.
Yeah, this is tough.
Hey, I know it.
So I had a really eclectic musical background growing up too. My dad was huge into like my dad's a man out of time. I think
I feel that on a spiritual level some days.
He's not going to mind me saying this, and if he does, I'll fight him. But
I'll kick your ass, old man.
No, he'd probably.
Yeah, he would. Brian would beat the Toyota out of you.
Yeah, he would. So he just turned 49 back in November, and like when he was growing up in the really like 80s, and like he came of age in the early 90s.
Yeah.
It was like George Strait, Alan Jackson, popping tops, and George Strait's putting out fires all over town, all that kind of stuff. So my dad liked that stuff, but he was still like doing the Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, like Merle Haggard, George Jones, Willie Nelson, like all those like classic country artists.
Bless.
But then I had my mom was musically a rebel because she did not like country music until she met my dad. Apparently
allegedly.
That's
right.
how it goes.
That's how the tales go.
That's what Tammy told me. She said all she would listen to is like Baptist gospel music and Billy Idol, REM, and like the Chris Cornell, like Soundgarden.
So like all bands that slap. It's like, you know, like I listen to this really good, like, like spiritual music, but then also all these bands that slap, you know, like Billy Idol.
I love Billy
day
Idol.
For a white wedding. Yeah, no, it's great.
I love Billy Idol, man. So like I had that like
so good
that mix growing up, and my parents were always good about.
That's what I think it is.
me
If you
onto
have
whatever.
parents that have good balance in music taste, you will be fine. If you have parents who have bad taste in music, you're fucked.
Yeah.
No one's gonna like you. You
sorry.
probably won't have friends.
Yeah, I hate
I'm sorry. That was a bit much. But
I hate
still,
to put it that way, but that's actually
it's kind of true.
Yeah, that's actually true. You're fucked.
All I can think about is like, because all of our friends, and if you think about all their parents have like good taste in music. Like I can think of like, I'll use Bobby as an example. Bobby has a pretty good taste
Master
in different
Moran.
type of music. And then you talk with his dad, also Master Moran.
Senior
He also has a
Master
pretty good.
Moran.
He also has a pretty good taste in
Yeah, he
music.
does.
And so it's like, yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, like it's all
They'll kick your
hereditary.
ass to that music too. Yeah, those guys are awesome.
I love them
We
all.
love our Masters Moran collectively.
Plurals.
But so I had this like,
Yeah.
I explored what I wanted to, and I was thinking about it the whole drive up here, like what am I gonna put for these? And
Right.
I could certainly go with like some of the classics, like Merle Haggard's Life in Prison is a great album, and
Yeah, or like, I mean, you could that's what I was thinking too when I was looking at my list. It was like, oh, I can say, well, Okie from Muskogee, but it's like,
yeah,
it's a bit cliche for
It
me.
is.
But honestly,
I love Merle Haggard,
I
too.
was looking at the list of songs. I was like, I listened to 3 songs on that album.
Yep.
That's not really that much of an album for me.
Yep.
But
I agree.
continue on, my friend.
And I would say, so I'm going to say, instead of going with any of the classics, I'm even going to put George Strait and Alan Jackson in the classics too, like those 90s and early 2000s guys. And even my girl Shania Twain.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to lump her in with the
Let's go,
classics
girls.
too.
When you hear that, I could run through a wall.
I used to jam to that shit back in the day. And you know what it was? My parents used to watch on Sunday mornings while they were getting ready to go to church. They'd have the CMT.
I was gonna say CMT music video.
The top 20 countdown for the
there
week.
It is.
And I'm like, 7 or 8 years old. I'm very like impressionable and in a formative young stage in my career. My parents got this.
Yeah,
I'm supposed to be getting ready for church, and I can't keep my eyes off this Shania Twain music video. I'm like, God damn. And that's what did it for me. I liked girls. I was like, okay.
and at that point in my life, I knew I was straight.
Yep. But no. So I'm thinking
that's
like
funny. Yeah, no.
I'm gonna keep it modern. Like someone who's put out an album within the last 5 years. That I would say
I can definitely respect that.
I would say that first and foremost, what like really got me into this like underground or like independent country was Cody Jinks' Lifers album.
Yep, and that's like a big
that was
thing.
his
That's
second
a
or
big thing
third,
for
I
us
think.
too.
Yeah.
It was like independent country.
Yep.
Because to also qualify, Jake and I hate pop country.
Yep.
We hate this corporatized.
Yep.
Knock 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 goes the diesel horse shit.
Yeah. Country Incorporated.
Yep, exactly. Yep, anything incorporated.
But yeah, I would say like Cody Jinks' Lifers album, that would be one for me. That put me on to, lots of these other guys. And he came out with an album either last year, I think it was last November maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Not 2022, but November 2021, he put out an album that was pretty good, Mercy.
Yeah.
And he's got new music coming out soon, I think. But
I mean, like Hippies and Cowboys did it for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that also kind of speaks to me in a little personal sense too.
Oh yeah, dude,
that's just me.
Yeah, that album Less Wise is really good too. I think that was his first studio album. There's a lot of good stuff on there.
There it really is.
Some good sad boy stuff. But so I got from like him to, I'm not even gonna say Sturgill because I don't think Sturgill's put out a record in like 3 or 4 years. But Sturgill's first 2 albums are awesome.
Yep, that also there's a appearance on my list for him as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's this guy Ian Noe out of Kentucky.
All right, I'm not familiar with him.
So he actually Sturgill signed him to his record label.
No shit. Oh, that's right. I forget. See, I forget that Sturgill has a record label too.
So Sturgill actually produced his first album, and then just kind of like oversaw his second album. So his second album, River Fools and Mountain Saints, came out in early 2022. And my God, that's probably like one of the best just singer-songwriter albums I've heard, at least within the last year or so.
Yep.
Like he's one of those guys, he just gets it, and it's like sure he's singing about Kentucky and Appalachia, but
which is a very important region for
It is.
this type of music, and I think that's forgotten.
It really is.
A lot of that folk and original style, even going back before like the Carter family, and all that type of stuff. And I think
does a good job.
I don't think enough
encapsulating
people.
it, too.
I don't think enough. Yeah, I agree with that, and I don't think enough people know about that history in the music anymore. And see, like Johnny Cash, for example, was very reverent of the fact that the Carter family and their importance in the tapestry of that what they did for music. Even
before he wanted to get into June's pants.
Yeah,
he knew
exactly. He knew it. It was just convenient.
Exactly. Yeah, no, so that Ian Noe album's going for me. I would say like Whitey Morgan's putting out some good
Whitey Morgan in the 76ers. Yeah, dude, they're tremendous.
They've got
a little cover of I'm on Fire.
Oh, yeah.
That's one of my favorite songs by him.
Oh yeah. So their most recent album was called Hard Times and White Lines.
Yep.
And that is just like a good working man's album.
I'll
right
admit.
there.
So that was gonna that's up there, dude. That was gonna make the honorable mention section because I looked at my summertime country music playlist,
Yep.
and like I was looking at how many songs of that album made it onto that playlist, and it's like
Also,
the
whole
last
damn
half
album.
of
Oh,
the
the whole
album.
damn
Yeah,
album.
it's
They've
like
got-
the first two, and then like the
Oh, yeah.
last 8.
So they're from, at least the lead singer and songwriter is from
Good old Whitey Morgan.
Flint, Michigan.
Yeah. Okay.
And they've got a great song on that album. It's called "What Am I Supposed to Do?" And it's, oh man, it's like, I think it just perfectly encapsulates what like working class America is going through right now. And there's
Yep.
just like something on there that speaks to me.
Okay. Yeah. By all means.
And then speaking to me, I gotta take this time right now and plug my boy Jesse Daniel, probably one of the top singer-songwriters doing his thing today. He has made, I think, 3 albums so far.
Yep.
He's got a live album that he actually just announced that's coming out in March, and I'm really pumped for that.
Yep.
But he put out an album in 2021 called Beyond These Walls, and I was already like turned on to him a little bit. Like, you know, 3 or 4 of his songs from his first album, another like 3 or 4 from his second album. That just like popped up on my Spotify recommendations.
Yeah, as it does.
So then I got a note. I liked the artist, and then I got a notification like, oh, his new album's coming out. I'm like, I'm gonna give this a listen, and it's like, it's that perfect mix of just like simple like relaxation type stuff. He's got a couple of barn burners on there, and then just some stuff that's like, you know, puts you in your feels.
Yeah, yeah.
And
That's a good combo.
He's got a really cool story too. So he was he was an addict for quite some time.
Oh, no
I think
shit.
he's like 6 or 7 years sober now.
Oh, wow. Good for him.
But like, and that shows up in a lot of his music. Is
Oh,
like
I'm
his
sure.
like his struggles with addiction, but also like, he has a couple good songs on that album Beyond These Walls. It's about like people he knows that
Yeah.
either, you know, succumb to addiction or were able to overcome it.
Yep. Yep.
And his fiance Jody Lyford is doing like writing a lot of songs with him, and she sings on the album too. Like, that girl's got a killer voice too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a good combo.
I love
yeah.
seeing the work that they're doing together. Then the last album I'm gonna just plug real quick
Yeah, of
is Red Shahan's Culberson County. He's from West Virginia, and that guy puts out some killer stuff too. It's just kind of like along the same lines. He'll throw out some barn burners and then some like, you know, just some good like chill stuff. And then there's a few songs that are like, oh my god,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know, hit you right in the feels, and you know, make you think of things that have never even happened to you before.
Right. Yeah. No, that's true.
That's
give
good
you
stuff. But
give you a whole new perspective, right?
yeah, that's the kind of stuff
crazy.
that I've been really like into lately.
Yep. Yep. Right on, dude. I guess for me, I definitely took more of a semi-classic approach to it. It's just, you know, looking at albums over all time for me, because like I said, country is by no means my like main area of like listening, but it's like definitely a high secondary, you know, area of listening. I guess Spotify even tells me so, because like even some of the stuff, like I guess to even say like some of the like early Grateful Dead stuff, like Working Man's Dead, could almost like even some of the Grateful
bet.
Dead experts even say, like I've even said to you before, could be even almost like a country album
Totally.
in a lot of ways, because like Jerry Garcia's playing the lap steel.
And they're more country than most stuff that's on the radio. The goddamn Rolling Stones are more country than like stuff that's on the radio today.
Fucking right. Yeah, of course it is. Like that's the truth. Yeah, for sure. Like if you go listen to like you know, Black Peter, or like some of these other, you know, Easy Wind, or some of these other, you know, deeper songs that's on. Less so Casey Jones. Yeah, Casey Jones is more of a, you know, it's more of a, you know, Grateful Dead-esque type song. But, you know, like everything else, you know, Uncle John's Band, like all that stuff is very much like folk and country orientated. I mean, like very much the true like Americana, you know,
their
vein
deep
of that.
cuts are perfect. Like,
Yeah.
Perfect Americana for
Oh,
me.
of course. And that's like why I send that stuff to you. And I mean, like, they've covered El Paso. They've covered, you know, Mama Tried, which obviously are legendary, you know, country songs in their own right. But I guess for me, my top, and I did do them in like a specific order at 5, I've got Marty Robbins' Gunfighter Ballads and Trail Songs,
Hell yes.
which, I mean, regardless of it being a legendary meme platform, also a legendary part of the soundtrack for the legendary Fallout New Vegas game, and also just in many other country and westerns throughout the years. I mean, Marty Robbins, I mean, from 100 Acres and a Mule to you know, again, like El Paso, you know, the original, you know, like the original El Paso, I guess I should say.
Hanging Me Tonight's
They're
a good
Hanging Me
one on there.
Tonight's a great one. And then Big Iron, the legendary Big Iron, you know, Texas Red and the Arizona Ranger, the legendary story.
Bum
And the
and clear
cool
leather.
thing about that album is it's a whole album of song stories.
Yep.
And I really appreciate being able to tell a really good story within a song and in a lot of ways. And so that's what I think is cool about country music, and specifically that album.
I got a second pressing, I think. So it's from the early 70s, off this guy who he used to DJ like all these parties at UNH back in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And this guy I used to work with, he's a record collector that he usually does like reselling and things like that. So he bought this whole collection off this guy, and was like, he's like, I know you like country and western and stuff like that. Like I took a few things out of here from my dad because he likes it, but just peek through it, take what you want, no charge. I was like, say less.
Say less, friend. Yeah.
So I got like that, like a bunch, like Merle Haggard, some Waylon Jennings and stuff like that. Emmylou Harris, just some like really good stuff.
Oh yeah, just really kick-ass shit.
Yeah.
No, that's tremendous. And I guess so at number 4 for me, a little bit newer of an artist, but I have Eric Church's Chief.
Yes.
That album really did it for me, and I mean, I'll be honest with you, that's the album that really turned me on to Eric Church. And so from that point, I was able to look back at like Carolina and like his first album, and then then the new album came out, and I've seen him in concert, and some of the most
fucking
fun.
performs.
You've
Holy
seen him too,
shit.
and like some of the best energy, and like one of the best concerts I've been to was Mr.
Another
Eric
shout out
Church.
to Big Al. We went to a concert and he came to Manchester. December of 2021. He was in Manchester.
He always comes up there and up
It was
like
like
Bangor.
It was like a
it's
3-hour
summertime.
show of him by himself, just
Yeah.
like doing his thing. That was amazing.
Oh,
One of
yeah.
the best concerts I've ever been to in my life.
Oh yeah, he's tremendous. He's tremendous. I went with a bunch of my friends.
Oh,
I mean, I still have my
Bet that was a
T-shirt
hell of a
up
time.
there. Some there. It was awesome. It isn't like when That's Damn Rock and Roll, that album came out, the Outsiders or whatever it was. Yeah, jeez. Look back on that very fondly.
Drank
That
a
was a
little
good summer.
drink,
Smoke a little smoke. Yeah. Oh, actually, I got a great story from that concert. So I actually went with one of my buddies who I'm gonna have on. I won't say their names, just to keep it all
of
secret.
course.
But I'm gonna have my buddies on pretty soon, and their mom went with us because she was a big country music fan, big Eric Church fan, and there were guys smoking J's and extra shit. She was a good sport about it and everything like that.
Well, in Maine, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Federally, nothing wrong with it.
At the time, there was.
Oh, well.
Yeah, but there was this really drunk dude next to us.
In
and,
Minecraft?
He was right next to her. He goes, "Hey, who's gonna play that Smoke a Little Drink song?" And I'm like, I was like, "Yep, only at the Bangor. It was at the Darlings Waterfront Pavilion or whatever. They've changed that. That place is
goddamn
actually
right.
really nice now. Before you could go over to Shaw's, buy a 30 rack and throw it over the fence
Oh, hell
and
yeah.
pick it up later on your way back through. Now, not so
that's a
much.
venue right
They've
there.
changed. No, the venue's changed a lot. It's not quite like that
Oh,
anymore.
man.
It's much more professional.
Oh, of course.
Now that we're civilized and such, so it takes a little bit of the fun out of it. But speaking of that venue, I sent you this the other day. Hank Williams Jr. is coming up
Yep.
this summer, and I would love to go.
I
That'd
would
be a
too.
great time.
I don't care what he plays, just to
Yeah.
just to say
I
I've
just-
seen Hank Jr.
If he
live.
could just not get overtly political for a minute, just if he could just go and sing like Family Tradition and Dinosaur
Oh
and
my
just
God.
go up there and slap the classics out, I'd be a happy little fish.
See, you know what though? Like one of the things that, and I'm like big on this with my students, is
Yeah.
that like you got to separate the art from the artist, and that's something I've been really good about the last, I would say, like couple of years. I've gotten
Yeah.
way better about it. Like with Hank Jr. especially. Like I love.
Oh, I can separate that, but like
I
someone
love
like
his
Kanye
music.
now, a little different. It's just like he's
Yeah.
just being ignorant.
That's a tough
about
one.
it. Yeah,
That's a
like,
tough
that's a little
one.
bit different. It's a little different.
I always have a hard time with my
and it's not
students
just because
ambush
it's
me.
rap. It's not because it's
Yeah.
It's not a race thing. It's strictly because the shit he's saying.
Yeah. and I always have a hard time with that. My students are like, I always
yeah,
feel
but
like
what about Kanye? It's
and,
like,
like, I don't think they know any better just because they don't pay attention to this kind of stuff. But when they'll like ask me, oh, like, what do you 808s and heartbreaks and college dropout, like I don't know if I should say I like those albums, because I do like those albums.
I do,
But
and like I'm like, yeah.
in my setting as a
It used to
professional,
be like
I
more
can't-
socially acceptable to say you like those albums, but like you also don't want to bring unwanted attention to yourself
Yeah.
by saying you like the artist
Exactly.
of someone who blatantly shouts out anti-Semitic shit and
Yeah.
other nasty fuck shit. It's like,
I haven't heard much from him lately though, so
probably for the better.
Yep.
He got married again.
I saw that.
But anyway, back to my list. Number 3, Alan Jackson's A Lot About Living.
Oh, hell yeah.
And A Little About Love.
Doodle-doo-doodle-doo-doodle-doo.
That, I mean, you got, I mean, in the meantime, while as I don't have a young Jamie, as you critiquing before, oh, you're the young Jamie, you're the this, you're the Googler, you're the everything. And
shit, Jamie, Google that.
Yeah, and it's just, it's a great album. It really is. And in the meantime, while I'm looking up the while I'm riffing and looking up the set list,
iconic
or the track list,
iconic riff on the opening track of that album. Too.
Yes, true. I mean, like, you got Chattanoochee. She's got the rhythm, and I got the blues.
Yep.
Let's see. Who Says You Can't Have It All? Tropical Depression, and then personal favorite, and also kind of tugs at my heartstrings a little bit, is Mercury Blues, because my first vehicle was was like a 2008 Mercury Milan, or 2009, something like that. But you know what?
Trudging through the back alleyways in Manchester, New Hampshire,
it was a swag wagon.
Crackheads.
Yeah,
and
it was.
Who knows what else?
Yeah, exactly.
On the way to the liquor store.
And other various, in Castro's back room and other various
When we were
places.
of legal age.
Yeah,
by the way, none of this happened before we were
21 years of age. Never happened, not once.
Only in Minecraft.
Only on the interwebs.
Yep.
But no, that being said, that album just tremendous,
Oh, yeah.
And then like Mercury Blues specifically, having a Mercury. There's something about a Mercury. It's like, there's something about a Mercury. And it's just like, yeah, you know what? I have a Mercury, and I'm going to drive it on into town.
Led Zeppelin played that song on a...
Did they really?
Yeah, it's like the BBC sessions or something
like
that. Oh,
those are some of the... Quick sidebar on the BBC sessions. Some of that stuff is like Jimi Hendrix did the BBC sessions.
He did.
And he did Day Tripper.
Yep.
He did a cover of that, and it's unbelievable. It's like the hard rock version of Day Tripper. He slaps that guitar right in your face.
Yep.
But anyway, continue, friend.
But yeah, no. So Led Zeppelin did a cover of that, and they actually, it was 2014 or 15, I think they dropped released some of the tracks from those things, like BBC sessions 1 and 2.
What year did that happen? Do you remember? Like originally
68, I think.
So early. Oh, so like Zeppelin 1, like pre-Zeppelin 1 even.
I think it was.
Or at the same time.
Yeah, I think
Zeppelin 1 was like 69 though.
So it must have been 69 then, because they had already come out with Zeppelin 1, because they played. They played some of the songs from Zeppelin 1. That was the whole point.
Oh, it was promotion for Zeppelin 1. Yeah,
totally.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Although, quick sidebar about Zeppelin, though, which is like another group that we both love.
Yep.
Dude, Zeppelin 2, as I've used to talk about on the podcast a lot in the early days of the first year, tremendous album, dude.
Yeah, really
every single talk about an album that I love every single song, from Lemon Song to just tremendous album.
I would even say, I mean, their first 4 albums obviously are just pretty incredible, but like Zeppelin 2 is probably one of the better, like, I would even call it like a hard rock album.
Yes.
It's like one of the early hard rock albums.
Yeah, I mean, like, other than like Iron Butterfly and like, AC/DC's early stuff.
Oh,
and, like,
certainly.
That is hard rock. Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, they look a lot of them need to look to like Led Zeppelin.
Yeah. And I would say their third album, also incredible start to finish, but the acoustic work in there is it's good, like acoustic, almost like folksy, like blues. Like they're really like experimenting on that album. And then the fourth,
I think the cool thing about a lot of British, and I'm not to insult any American artists by any means, but I think a lot of these British artists were much more willing to be experimental with their music. Like, I don't know, like you look at people like, whether it be the guys from the Beatles or the guys from the Stones, or I mean, maybe we just put them on such a pedestal. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some incredible American musicians out there. Don't get me wrong. Like, I mean, I love, anybody from, Jerry Garcia to, Tom Petty to, whatever. But I don't feel Tom Petty was a great musician and a great songwriter and everything, but I don't feel like he created his own like brand of music.
No.
Or his own like, I don't think he like created his own genre. He was doing good shit, but it's like, it's very much like in the style of like Southern rock. Yeah. He is a Southern rocker.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel like he did anything
Which
to
I
redefine.
Appreciate.
Like,
I love Southern rock.
Yeah, he did. I mean, like, he's one of the best to do it.
Yeah.
And he's his own breed of it, but I don't think he, and I mean, I'm a huge, and this is coming from somebody who's a huge Tom Petty fan too.
Yeah.
Who was like genuinely upset when he died. What I'm saying?
We're
like,
supposed to go see him, and then he up and died on us.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Huge letdown.
Huge letdown. Yeah, you're telling me, dude.
Why'd you have to die, man? No, that was tough. That was a really tough time. I think I probably listened to Damn the Torpedoes at least 4 or 5 times that week.
And then like the album with the last DJ on it.
Yep.
I mean, he was very political in his music in the sense of how he felt about the recording industry and how commercialized and how it really hurt creation and the flow of good music and everything like that.
Yeah.
Like I remember watching one of his like the documentary. It wasn't like made by Netflix, but it just happened to be on Netflix.
Yeah.
It might even be called Damn the Torpedoes. It's like Tom Petty's life, and like this was made while he was still alive.
I don't think
like Rick Rubin's on it, like
really?
a bunch of because he did that album with Rick Rubin and Johnny Cash. Like the Heartbreakers played backup for Johnny Cash on I think like America 4 or whatever that Johnny Cash album was.
Damn.
It was one of those Johnny Cash albums. It was the one that has Rusty Cage on it.
Oh.
When he covers that, that's Tom Petty is singing backup on some of the songs, and the Heartbreakers are playing as the band.
That's pretty sick.
Johnny Cash had such a huge respect for Tom Petty. He thought he was a hell of a musician, and also Tom Petty had a huge love for Johnny Cash. So this is a great story, and I think I told this way back on like when I had Tony Gabriel on my dad's musician friend, because I think we were talking about Tom Petty.
That was a good episode, by the way.
So, thank you, buddy. Appreciate that. And we were talking about, like people's influences and stuff like that. And I was like, like Tom Petty really looked up to like Carl Perkins, another great country guy while we're talking about country music, and Johnny Cash. And
Sun
then like
Records
they were
too.
They were doing some interview, and Tom Petty can like see behind him, and he goes, "Holy shit. That's Carl Perkins and Johnny Cash. I'll be right back." He like takes the headset, the mic off, and like goes and talks to them.
That's awesome.
In like the middle of the interview.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'd probably do the same thing though.
I don't blame him. Fuck.
I can't imagine anybody be interviewing me for anything like that significant where I'd run into those two fellows, but
you can't now, but it's true. But getting back to my list, and I don't know. Like I said, the story is the cool part. Is the cool thing. Is really the cool thing about country music. And so, as I mentioned, he'd be making an appearance. And so, at number 2 is Mr. Sturgill Simpson, Meta Modern Sounds in Country Music. This album, it's safe to say, it was filled a big old hole in a time where I was going through some stuff.
Yep.
But it's an album that really makes you think about a lot of stuff at the same time. It was originally introduced to me by, actually, Luke Strushton, of all people. He showed me the first song being Turtles All the Way Down, which is a tremendous track in its own right. I mean, it can be meant in the literal sense of the theory of turtles all the way down, where there's a turtle on the back of a turtle, which holds up the world. And this is me not doing the description any justice, mind you, but there's a whole book about it.
Yeah.
Like, you can buy the book, read the book. That'll do you a better description. I can't even tell you who it's by. But, again, I should have done the research on it, but I didn't. So be it. But, it's the Turtles All the Way Down talks a lot about Sturgill Simpson's own personal, I guess, drug use and, and struggling with, religion and struggling with all the different things and the factors that go on in life and also the concept of the afterlife and everything else that goes on in between that. So it's really a song that makes you think. And on top of that, there's a lot of other great songs. Again, a lot of this album does talk about
the first 4 tracks in there just absolutely slap.
Yep.
And it's like it puts you through the range of emotions too.
It really does.
Like you get swallowed up by the couch on the first track, and then right away you're jumping into Life of Sin.
Yeah.
And it's like you're ready to tear some shit up and fuck
and
around.
Sturgill Simpson is one of the best modern country artists as far as I'm concerned. He's definitely in a genre of what I'd call cosmic country.
Yep.
It's definitely more of like you took an acid tablet and you bled it into a guitar, and you're getting a little tingly from playing the guitar. You put it over the strings or something. That's Sturgill Simpson. That's like cosmic country. It's definitely a mix of like some of the elements that are captured in a lot of your like 60s and 70s jam band stuff, but in country music.
Yep. My girl and I love that album. That album is just
so good.
It's amazing. God. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about that. I remember 2016-ish, 2015, 2016, would have been like that summer between freshman, sophomore year. I got put onto his first album. It's a lot more like traditional country sounds. That's got like You Can Have the Crown and what's it called? Like Cole, old King Cole. That's a good one.
Yeah, yeah.
Like his more traditional country songs, and I love that album. But then,
like High Top Mountains.
yeah. And then like because I'm a big fan of the Doors too. I love the
Yep.
I got a soft spot for some of that psychedelic stuff, and
Right.
I heard, Sturgill made this psychedelic album. I was like, what? Like, I never thought to put like country and like the psychedelic acid stuff together.
They actually go together very well.
They really do.
Ask Uncle Willie when he's rolling that J how cosmic country
and that's
goes.
also that Ian Noe album I was talking about.
Yeah.
Same type of shit too, and it's it's just so good. But anyway, long story short, meta-modern sounds
in country music.
Yep.
Tremendous. And then my number one album, and I mean this goes without saying, and if you know me, you're not like, wow, this is a shock that this is Dumont's number one country album, or Du's number one country album rather. But my number one album is Johnny Cash's Live at Folsom Prison.
Yep.
And I mean the album goes without saying. It's one of the best selling albums of all, not even just country albums. It's one of the best selling albums of all time. Surpassed the Beatles records for time at number one.
And that's some hard shit to do.
He went into a fucking penitentiary, one of the worst prisons in the United States, still is, frankly, Folsom Prison, which he heard about back when he was in the Air Force, when he was watching, a movie. And case in point, he wrote the song Folsom Prison Blues, talking about, inmates. See, the thing with Johnny Cash is that this guy was larger than life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, from the second he was born. I mean, like, the man was not going to follow an easy life, but it was going to be a path of being a larger-than-life figure.
Yep.
And like I said, I'm not saying his life was easy. He struggled with his own demons and whatever. He was not perfect. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying he's larger than life in the sense that, like, inmates used to write letters to him. Johnny Cash spent very little time in prison. Like, he played that into a bigger situation than what it was. Yes, he got arrested buying drugs once and spent, I think, like a night or two in jail. But he did not spend a long-term sentence in prison.
Merle Haggard, I think, has more street cred than Johnny Cash.
He actually does.
He spent like
they actually joke about that.
Years in jail.
Yeah, they joke about that in one of his interviews. Like, you have more street credit than Johnny Cash. He's like, yeah, well, Mr. Cash is Mr. Yeah, he still kick your ass.
Yeah.
Yeah. Johnny Cash is up there high on cocaine, ready to put his. I mean, the thing is, I mean, Johnny Cash was a big dude.
Yeah, he was.
He was like 6 foot something. Yeah. I mean, I think he was the tallest of the Highwaymen when they were all together.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe
around with that.
I don't know. I wouldn't have messed with him or Waylon Jennings or any of those guys really.
Those
Chris Christopherson, even being as left of left of liberal is still kick your ass. Yeah, no. That's the cool thing about those guys. It's like, I mean, I think more Willie Nelson in that aspect. He's much more liberal than I think Johnny Cash.
Oh yeah.
But again, Johnny Cash died in 2003, so we haven't seen how Johnny Cash would have played out in the modern. But I don't know, like seeing his thoughts on religion and stuff like that. Like, and again, I'm kind of speaking for him, I guess, which isn't correct, but I don't know. I think I know where he'd be on the abortion issue and a few things like that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up too. Like that's
and
something.
So it's like I don't know. Like continue.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up, man. Like that's something I've been big about with my students over the last couple of years. Is like you can't. It's always so tempting to judge people with like a I always say like a 2022 or a 2023.
Yeah,
lens.
2023 now, right?
So like, actually, a really cool activity I did with my kids this year was, it's called "Was Abraham Lincoln Racist?" Which like gut reaction.
I know where you're going with this. Yep.
Gut reaction. Okay. You're like,
no, of course.
Well,
not.
like
how can the guy who freed the slaves be
racist?
Racist, right?
Exactly.
But you have to look at. I mean, like even just what I know of Lincoln. You have to look. He was a free soiler at first.
Yep.
You know what? They were cool with the existence of slavery.
They were, and
just
then
not in any new territories. But
yeah.
Anyway,
so his whole deal, like 1840s, when his brief stint in Congress from Illinois. He came out in support of the American Colonization Society, which, to its credit, was an abolitionist movement, but they wanted to end slavery and then take all the slaves and just send them to Liberia and back. It was like a
basically Back to Africa.
Yeah, it was like a precursor to Back to Africa. It's like
Yeah,
white
it was
people,
it was the first generation of Back to Africa, but run
Yeah.
by white people versus
basically
versus African Americans.
So,
yeah.
fun fact, actually, Frederick Douglass debated a member of the American Colonization Society in Pittsfield, New Hampshire, and according to newspaper reports at the time, absolutely mopped the floor with him.
I'm sure he did. Frederick Douglass was a brilliant guy.
He was. And
he even put Lincoln on his ass a couple
he
times.
did.
Like he
Rightfully so.
He made Lincoln sweat,
Yeah, rightfully,
and rightfully so.
But yeah, so like you have like Lincoln saying these things like, yeah, I support this movement and stuff like that. But like at the end of the day, like we're looking at Lincoln with the 2023 lens. I think because of like what Lincoln did for his time, he was certainly like a very liberal person. Like
Right.
he,
in 1865, of course.
he probably had a few beliefs that by today's standards we would certainly say is like, well, how could you think that, right?
How could you think that, Mr. Lincoln? How dare you?
But I think if you put Abraham Lincoln in 1964, we know what side of the Civil Rights Act he would be on, and if you put Abraham Lincoln in 2022, like we know what he would be thinking today.
Yeah.
Just like I think you can take Andrew Jackson, a very fascinating president. If you took Andrew Jackson and put him in 1865, we know what side he would be on.
Yeah.
If you put Andrew Jackson in 1965, you know what side he would be on.
Well, he said the only good Indian's a dead Indian, and so I think we know where he'd be on that one.
Exactly.
And it's like, I don't know. Yeah, and I know where he'd be today on the Black Lives Matter thing.
Certainly.
He'd be like, look, I adopted a black kid. They're great, because that's exactly what he did in 1830, whatever, when he, look, I don't hate Indians, I adopted one, or Native Americans, I adopted one. It's like,
Which I always bring that fact up with my kids when we study the Indian removal stuff, and you do have some kids that are just like, they stop right there and like, oh, you know what, he's actually a good guy. Like,
you're missing the point, but that's okay. That's all right.
But that's the thing, too, is like, it's not, like, as much as I want to say, like, I want kids to be like good to themselves and good to others, it's not my job to tell kids what to think at the end of the day. Like if a kid wants to think that,
you're right.
Fine, but
you're right.
I always like doing little things like I'll plant. I like to do like some seed planting.
Yeah,
and
I know.
I'll make
and
them
then,
hopefully something comes up one day where like, oh, you know what? I remember I
he
had a
was
teacher
right.
because I had that like when I was growing up. I had teachers that were like, I thought one way about them, and then as I learned more and I would go back and like look at some of the things that they were like telling me about, I'm like, oh, I was wrong about this person all along. Like they knew what was up.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
They knew what was up.
Yeah. Oh no, that definitely does happen too. And like I said, that's the real big thing about teaching is sharing. Like I said, I felt the sharing perspective. And,
it is.
And all that type of stuff, and that's like at the end of the day, if you, I like even if like only one at the end of the day listens to what you had to say and like benefits from it, you did your job.
That's a victory.
That's a big huge
W. Victory. You get one kid that walks away at the end. Just take the microcosm of like a single 80-minute class period. If I get one kid walking away saying like I learned something today, whether that was like I don't want to be like this, or like I learned some like random obscure fact, like whatever it was,
whatever that might be.
They walk away learning at least one thing. I'm cool.
Yeah,
I've done my job.
You are.
I'm happy.
Yeah, you did. You were A, paid to do, and B, what you wanted to do at the end of the day. I mean, and that's super rewarding in a lot of sense. And that's like, I guess the one thing I do miss about education is like being able to work with.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess I'll have that someday when I train an apprentice or 2 or 3. But like, like I don't know, you just miss that. You miss out on that in certain aspects, and so yeah, it is what it is, though.
My favorite part of the job is just getting to like, like people like I always feel like you get like trapped with these questions when you go and interview for teaching jobs. They'll ask like, why did you want to be a teacher? And if you don't say it's because of the kids right away, like there should be some kind of a red flag popping up because that's what matters.
Can I stop you real quick?
Please do.
That's actually a funny thing you say that.
Yeah.
Because they interviewed me, quote unquote, for my job that I had, the teaching job, and I said I didn't love kids, and then that was the biggest critique of my interview.
Oh yeah.
And I said, well, I figured if I was interviewing for a fucking and this is exactly how I said it. Well, I figured if I was interviewing for a fucking teaching job, you'd like kids. What person would go into education and not like children? And they go, think about who you work with. And I said, that's a good fact, but you still hired them, you stupid fuck.
Yeah.
What'd they say? They love children? Like, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah, you'd
like,
be surprised.
Yeah. Oh, it's incredible. It's magnanimous. It's really incredible. Like, it was like, I didn't know I had to say I love children. It's like, you know, I guess in some places you have to be careful how you say that.
Yeah.
Because like, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I would say
wild.
like even in my time, you know, just in these like, you know, 4 years, I've come across people that I've questioned whether or not they're in the right.
Yeah, like,
right
why are you
profession. Like,
doing
what are
this?
you doing?
Yeah.
Man? Like,
You hate kids. Why are you?
Yeah.
Why are you like? Go work in a post office or something.
seriously.
Jesus Christ! Like,
I mean, there's
not-
people certainly like you come across people whose like their heart's in the right place, but just sometimes like the grind of that again, that whole schooling versus education, it gets to them.
Yeah.
And they take it out the wrong way.
Yep.
And I always feel bad for them and for the kids too.
Of course. Yeah, I mean, you do, you know, and it's just like, I think, like I said, I think we have a lot, and I think COVID would have been a really unique time to reset a lot of things in education and fix a lot of problems, and guess what they didn't do?
Dick all.
I agree. I don't think they did. I don't think the school boards, I think they should have gotten all the school boards or whatever across the country together, or at least like all the ones in New England together, all the ones in the Mid-Atlantic together, like regionally, and like, this is the new workout plan. This is the new, you know, this is how we're going to be able to fix some really heavy shortcomings of the American education system. Like, look what they're doing in Europe. Look what they're doing in Asia. Look at what they're, you know, look at how our students aren't matching up, you know, like, and it's not just through standardized testing. It's through actual, like, comprehensive, like, well thought out plans.
Yeah. And
like
you
I said, organization and planning
oh yeah.
is huge to any sector. It doesn't matter if you work in the trades or if you work in education. If you don't have good organization and good planning, fuck all, really.
And you count your lucky stars when you do. Like, so, you know, where I currently am, I feel very blessed. We have a very, like, I would say, an incredible administration, like top down.
Yeah.
Very, very supportive of our teachers and of our students too. And I think just my district in general, I'm very, very lucky. We have people who know what it's about, and you know, and
that is lucky,
and they,
you don't
go
get
to
that
work with the
everywhere.
right mindset.
Yeah, yep.
Which I really love that. And that's something that I've been kind of like looking for over the last couple of years, and now that I finally found it, I'm very happy.
Yeah, I mean, like I know you and I talking privately you've also mentioned that it's like, I hope I eventually get to a district, and like, no offense to your, I mean, no offense by me, but to your, you know, where you've come from, but it's like you just never felt like you were at that place where you felt like you were among like quality peers.
Yeah,
and like to the fact that, you know, like, it's nice to not always have to be like the smartest person in the room, quote unquote, or like, you know what I'm saying, or being like, like, don't get me wrong, like, you're great, Jake, I know how you are. You're a great educator and whatever, but it's just like, it's nice to have other people who are also just as capable in their own
at
right
least as a
around
sounding
you.
board.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, exactly. Whether it be in your own department to bounce ideas off of, or whether it just be on your own team. I don't know if you guys are on teams or however that things are split up that way, but like, it's like you can learn a lot from your. I learned so much from my other teammates when I taught. You know, that was a huge thing for me. Was, you know, especially there was one other team member who was closer and who also just like graduated from college a couple of years, like a year or two, and so was in the same like age bracket as I was, and so like we were the two younger ones, and there were two that had been veteran educators, you know, quote unquote.
It's always nice having that good mix. Like
except we had one of the folks on our team that you could tell, I don't know if they just had a lot going on at home or whatever, but you could tell they were not happy.
Not a happy person.
Just not a happy person. Just not happy being in education.
That's tough.
It felt, and like,
and the kids pick up,
and like
on that
they
too.
had felt, and talking with the person, it felt like they had gotten snubbed, and like the district had always been out to get them, and it's like, then why are you still teaching here? Like, there are other school districts around, like even just in this area. Like, it's like, are you that? I don't know. I'm speaking for somebody personally, I guess at this point, but it's just like, I don't know. It's just like, you're not happy here. None of the kids like you, and with all due respect, like I come into homeroom and like that's one of the biggest things is when like that would tie me. It was like, well, I can't really comment on this because this is my, you know, my counterpart. Like, this is your teacher in this subject, and I'm keeping it real, real anonymous for a reason.
I always ask kids if they're assuming something.
Yeah,
they're like, well, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah,
like, you know what they say about assumptions makes an ass out of you and me.
Yeah,
I'm not doing anything like
that. Nope, never.
I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's just like, yeah, I understand you're frustrated, kiddo, but like that's just how it is, unfortunately, in this regard. Like we can do what we can do when you're in my room learning English or in your room when you're doing social studies, but unfortunately when you're doing this other subject somewhere else, that's just the way the cookie crumbles, bud.
Yep.
That's the tough part.
That's the important thing too, is I think, is in a vacuum, obviously you don't want to have bad teachers or bad bosses anywhere, but I think it's important that kids learn how to freaking deal with that, because you are going to have
and that's
bad
true.
bosses,
and it's
bad coworkers.
Yeah, it's something I struggle with, it's like, or have struggled with, it's like, you just gotta, unfortunately, like sometimes you just gotta deal with it. It's just like one of those things. It's just like, sometimes if you're not happy with your current situation, sometimes you do just have to deal with it.
Yep.
Will it get better? Probably. But like at the same time, you just got to unfortunately just got to, tough through certain things. And that is an important life lesson, in its own right,
really
for the kids.
It really is.
And so, it's just like I said, it's a wild amalgamation of things, especially, going into this new year. I'm really curious to see what 2023 has in store for us. So I guess just to round things out, Jake, what's your hopes for 2023? What do you hope to see?
From an education standpoint,
or any standpoint, it doesn't matter. I know we ask only the tough questions here at the DuView podcast.
Always, I expect nothing less. I would say, well, without throwing anyone or any particular institution under the bus,
right.
I would say that my hope is that within the next school year or two, we can get back to quality education and kind of unsiloing social studies and getting social studies education specifically more out there, because I think that it allows kids to make those cross-curricular connections, even just I'm going to be super cliche here, but it helps them see more shit that's going on in their lives and at least understand why things are happening, even if they don't like things that are happening.
Yeah,
at least
you can come up with an explanation for it.
I know why this thing that I don't like is happening, and then it gives them the space to be like, okay, well, here's what I can do to fix that.
Of course,
or at least try to fix that. I would say, personally, something that I'm looking forward to in 2023 is getting. Something I'm personally looking forward to in 2023 is, getting the ball rolling with some wedding
planning. That's right.
Wedding planning.
Because you also are an engaged man. Congratulations! I forgot to mention that.
Shout out Big Al.
Big Al, Allison.
Yep.
And that's so that's been the cool thing for me is that didn't know for the first time didn't know your significant other completely out of the blue, completely separate from any anything, and then bam, new person, get to meet her, golden retriever, Ellie.
Ellie, shout out to Ellie too.
Yeah, right.
You doofus.
I'm looking up Jake, and no offense to your dog, but it's just is there a thought in there? Not a single one. No. Poor thing.
That's why I love her though.
Yeah.
She's awesome.
Yeah, she's a simple dog. It's a dog.
Yeah, she's a
dog's
she's
dog.
And my aunt's got, I think, 3 golden retrievers, and they're all just absolute maniacs. And Ellie's a maniac sometimes, but she's very well behaved and
fetch as well.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah.
She does. She's a retriever. She retrieves things. She does her job description very well.
Yeah,
but she's cool, man. I think she has a sixth sense about it. She knows when stuff's wrong.
Yeah.
And that's when she knows to just come in, make her presence felt, and be pet me, and everything will be okay.
Okay. Does her service as a dog, and that's tremendous. That's good.
She's awesome.
That's good. Yeah, like I said, I've been to your guys' home and met your dog, and great housewarming party back a few months ago, and a long while. It feels like a long while ago now, but
yeah, Allison's awesome.
Yeah, you guys are awesome. She's great, fantastic, excellent. And like I said, just happy for you guys, setting out on your own, starting your own adventure. Completely ignored that part of the, your personal life on the podcast. Sorry about that.
No, really, just like you said, it came out of nowhere. It came out of nowhere for me too. I was I think we were on a rough spot during when COVID first hit.
Yeah.
And just we met at the right time.
Yeah. Hey, things
We met at the right
sometimes things
time.
work out like that.
I do.
They're supposed to, you know.
I'm grateful for that kind of stuff.
Right on, dude. Well, I'm happy for you guys, and like I said, Jake, thank you for making the drive up here,
bet,
dude.
man.
This has been fantastic, and like I said,
Happy to be here.
it's more than just having a friend on. Like I said, you were the first person I befriended in college, and greatly appreciate your friendship and advice and all the wild times through the years and all the fun we've had and the memories.
course.
So and the talks about music and Lord knows what else. So thank you for coming up, buddy.
Yeah,
I
you
greatly
bet, man.
appreciate it. And
Happy to be here.
wish you the best of the best of 2023, and
You too,
wouldn't
buddy.
start it off any other way. So thank you for all of you for coming back and listening in the new year here. Like I said, we'll be hopefully back here with some video content here soon. Like I said, we're still getting the ball rolling on that, so hopefully you'll be seeing us here pretty soon, and hopefully we'll also be getting the heat fixed in the studio because it's a bit chilly down here right now. And so, like I said, we're balling on a budget here at the DuView podcast, but we're building in 2023. Like I said, really hope to do some bigger things here, and so like I said, hopefully to be seeing you, kind of quote unquote seeing you guys here soon. But in the meantime, stay up to date with everything we're doing. DuView 207 is the Instagram account, and the DuView podcast everywhere else. Please, 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 in the new year, if you could, share our episodes in any way you could. Share our posts, like our posts, any of that type of stuff, guys. Really helps me get out there. That's really the big push for 2023 for me, is just really getting out there and getting in the ears of more people. And the only way I can do that with the help of folks like yourself. So that being said, guys, please subscribe, like, share, any of that type of stuff. It's a huge help. And leave a review or a rate on Apple Podcasts or on Facebook. All that stuff helps too. So thank you, Jake, for coming on, and thank you,
bet, man.
everybody else, for tuning back in. And we got some more stuff here coming at you here in 2023. It's going to be busy for me, and I'll explain all that here pretty soon. But looking forward to it, and I hope everybody has a great time, and we'll talk to you soon.